Check, check, 1, 2. How does that sound in the lobby? Good. Okay.
The time is now 5:30, and I will call to order the City of Durango regular City Council meeting for August 18th, 2026. May I please get a roll call?
Mayor Woodruff,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lawyer,
Here.
Councilor Yazzie,
Here.
Councilor Costo,
Here.
and Councilor Gonzalez.
Thank you. May I please get a reading of the Indigenous Land Acknowledgement?
This is a call to honor and respect Indigenous sovereignty and self-determination. As residents and visitors of Durango, we're called upon to educate ourselves about the history and cultural heritage of the land that we inhabit. The city of Durango is situated on the ancestral homelands and territories of the Nuchu, Ute, Jicarilla Apache, Pueblos of New Mexico, Hopi-Sinam, Hopi, and Diné Navajo nations. The original stewards of this land were forcibly removed and exposed to countless atrocities by the United States government, including repeatedly broken treaties, forced assimilation, the tragic legacy of Indian boarding schools, and the loss of ancestral homelands. We recognize lasting generational trauma exists within Native communities today. We affirm the continuing importance of ancestral sites to descendant communities as integral to the living cultural landscape. This acknowledgement only becomes meaningful when combined with accountable relationships and informed actions. May this serve as a step towards inclusion and reconciliation.
Thank you. May I please get the introduction of the translator?
Thank you. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Liz Torres y estoy aquí con mi colega Sam Guzmán. Estamos aquí con la Cooperativa Comunitaria del Lenguaje. Gracias por su compromiso con justicia lingüística para que así todos puedan escuchar en el idioma de su corazón. Si usted se está reuniendo el día de hoy por medio de Teams, puede usted participar por medio del menú de más y seleccionar la interpretación de ahí. Si tiene alguna pregunta, por favor, levante su mano. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Liz Torres, and I am here with my colleague, Sam Guzman. We are here with a community language cooperative so that we can have language justice and everyone can hear in the language of their heart. If you're joining us from the Teams app today, please go to the More menu and select Speech and Language, and you can select English or Spanish from there. If you have any trouble, please do raise your hand to let us know that you're having trouble accessing language. And we can go ahead and get interpretation turned on and get started.
Thank you. Moving on to number 3, opening remarks by Mayor and Council. Seeing none, moving on to presentation and proclamations, which there are none. So then we move over to 5 city manager updates.
Yes, Mayor and Council, for our first update, we have Scott McLean to give an update on the e-bikes and Bureau of Land and Management, as well as the Conservancy.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Scott McLean with Parks and Recreation. So providing an update in response to talking points that were provided and just where we're at with investigating e-bikes on conservation easements and with the BLM. So just starting off with some of the conversations we've had since the meeting 2 weeks ago that staff, Owen Talman, Sarah Humphrey, and myself met with Jen Saratko with the Platte Open Space Conservancy last week Some of our key takeaways from that discussion, I think one was just a reminder that the conservation easements at that point are a collaboration between La Plata Open Space Conservancy, the city, Trails 2000 at that point, and GOCO. Through the conservation easements, we, the city, made a commitment to protect the conservation purposes of the donation in perpetuity, with the understanding that open space has the purpose of conservation values, scenic vistas, wildlife habitat, as well as recreation. La Plata Open Space Conservancy holds a conservation easement and is bound by regulations set by both the IRS and the state when reviewing amendment requests, and La Plata Open Space Conservancy is obligated to enforce the terms of the deed. The La Plata Open Space Conservation does not routinely amend conservation easements except for the purpose of strengthening the conservation easement's underlying purpose, improving enforceability, or adding additional area to the conservation easement, and that any amendment will need to prove a net neutral or net benefit to the amendment, adding acreage that improves stewardship and conservation value. So it's not just an offset of acreage that has a greater conservation net or greater conservation value than the area that we're amending. We also had discussion with Great Outdoors Colorado, with GOCO. They will need to provide written approval for an amendment. In general, GOCO takes a neutral stance on e-bikes on GOCO-funded properties. They look to the partners to manage conserved properties in a way that balances both protecting the conservation values and the needs of the community. The GOCO strategic plan outlines their program values. And those values are resource conservation, outdoor stewardship, community vitality, equitable access, and youth connection. So anytime we're applying for a grant, they're analyzed compared to how they meet those values in the overall evaluation of the grant application. We had discussion with BLM, or Owen had email discussion with BLM. I'll share that at a later talking point. And then this Friday, we have a meeting scheduled with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. The initial meeting was set up to discuss later in tonight's meeting. We have a resolution requesting council support for a grant application with GOCO. As part of that application, we need a letter from CPW that is a wildlife review form. So talking through what the wildlife habitat impact will be from the proposed project, how that can be addressed or mitigated. So along with that conversation, we're planning to also talk about the recent direction we've had from BLM on Smart 160 and wildlife habitats, and then the overall conversation with the conservation easements, and really trying to talk with them big picture on how do we continue to address the needs of wildlife while also providing for the needs of our community as we continue to grow and develop. And then another meeting that working on putting together is with Colorado Springs Parks and Rec staff there, that they have been working through some easements, conservation easements as well. The staff person was out on summer vacation last week, this week, so I'll call him Monday morning and see if we can set up a time. But really want to talk to him, see where they've been, what they've done, lessons learned, and exactly kind of where they're at, what is the language and the conservation easements that they're dealing with. The next talking point I had was just looking at other areas that don't have conservation easements. So I think Owen did a good analysis on laying out length of trails and kind of reassessing where we were at with that, but it came back with consistent message that we had last week. I think the opportunity that was pointed out with College Mesa seems like the easiest, greatest opportunity to increase area that e-bikes are permitted. That some of that land is owned by the state or Fort Lewis College, so that'd be a conversation with them. Next step, possibly could add another 7.5 miles. And the cost associated with that, I think, would be public education, some signage, and likely some additional maintenance, but not expecting that to be large. The e-bikes, so kind of recapping what we said at the last meeting, permitted at Durango Mesa Park, Twin Buttes, the spur line trails, which are not city owned. That's about 28% of our natural surface trails that are accessible to e-bikes. And then the other areas, the city that has conservation easements would be Horse Gulch, Dalla Mountain Park Overend, and then BLM land would be Animas Mountain, Grandview, and then Skyline or the Smoke Jumper Trail. And then last question, just on how we kind of coordinate with BLM, and the comment that the BLM is inclined to follow the municipality's ordinance when it comes to allowing e-bikes on soft surface trails. Conversation with BLM is that they are not required to follow adjacent municipal ordinances, but the BLM does look at and consider what's allowable on neighboring parcels as they're making their decisions. As partners, we've had this conversation with other agencies in the past and trying to, if we're going to make a change, do it at the same time so that we're not setting up where you have a BLM parcel, a city parcel with a trail that goes across, one agency changes where e-bikes or a change in use is permitted, and then all of a sudden you're at kind of an invisible boundary line where it's not. So trying to do that in sync. So I think we'll continue to have conversations with BLM. The direction they had was that this would likely require additional analysis under the NEPA process and a travel management plan amendment in order to make that happen on their side. So next steps, as I mentioned, meeting with Colorado Parks and Wildlife this week, having a discussion with Colorado Springs Parks and Rec, seeing where they're at, reviewing with our legal team once we get all this information from the different agencies pulled together, and then trying to look at a strategy. I think a lot of our conversation with Colorado Parks and Wildlife will guide this, but that strategy for additional acreage with net benefit for conservation values, and then developing a request for amendment or the application to get to La Plata Open Space Conservancy. And then in response, that will outline their reply back to us will outline the steps that we need to go through as far as additional surveys, kind of baseline where things are at now and how we compare that in the process for us. And then follow-up conversations with the BLM. So happy to take any questions. And then I think just kind of this feels like still kind of in the middle of some conversation. So I'd be happy to provide an update, either email or at another council meeting upcoming as we get a little bit farther.
Great. Thanks, Scott. Questions, Councilor Lawyer.
Yeah, I think because it is kind of community focused and there's a lot of interest, another update once we kind of have next steps at a council meeting under a city manager update as one counselor, I think that would be beneficial. Just because I think Councilor Koso mentioned he had more people about this topic at his office hours, and we're continually getting stuff. And so I think it's important. So if that works for everyone else, I think that would be great. In terms of our ordinance, when we passed for however many years ago it was when we were on council and we passed the, e-bike desire to have it on our soft surface trails and, work through some of these issues that we're still working through. Did our ordinance change at all? Did we change our ordinance during that or no?
I'm not aware of it changing,
so.
no. So if the ordinance was specific to the easements in Horse Gulch, and at a later date in 23, staff made a recommendation to postpone as Durango Mesa Park was just getting ready to open up trails and have an opportunity to look at what impact was, kind of evaluate that or use that as somewhat of a baseline compared to what we have in Horse Gulch.
Speaking as mostly towards the BLM side of things, because it does sound like they do take it into consideration as they're updating their plan, which it's been 6 years since they've updated theirs for this area. So I feel like it could be beneficial would there be a way to change our ordinance that says that as long as it aligns with landowners, the city of Durango supports e-bikes on or class 1 e-bikes on soft surface trails? Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yes, I think I just lean to Scott to see if there's a staff professional feel on that, for lack of a better word, or recommendation. I don't see an issue with that if that's where the council wants to go, but I would want to jump out and say I don't see an issue with it, and if Scott and his team may see some complications with that.
Do you see an issue? Do you want to look at it into it? And
Why don't we look at that and provide response?
Yeah, and then if so, I can put it on new business and ask for that if that works. But just seeing that they do take that into consideration, and our ordinance doesn't say that, even though we voted that way, I think that would be important. And then thank you for continually to work on these meetings. I know that they can be time consuming and there's a lot of back and forth and not real direction. But just thank you for continuing to work on them.
Great. Councilor Koso, you didn't have anything? Okay, great. Thank you, Scott. I know it's been a lot of meetings and a lot of conversations with stakeholders. So thank you for taking the time. And I'm really glad you brought up Colorado Springs because I was doing a little homework and talking to some stakeholders within the community about a possible amendment to the conservation easement. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing how that conversation goes with those folks up there. And I think it was the Palmer
Land Trust.
Palmer Land Trust, yeah. So I'd be interested to see how those conversations go. I'd love to hear an update as you talk to them. And then also, and I think when we look at this, we don't have to take this shotgun approach, in my opinion. We can be more strategic and intentional about where we do potentially want to roll this out. Especially if we're going to have to get attorneys involved and costs and that sort of thing, I think it would be, more, I think more prudent to try to do something, just in one kind of area to start with. And so, looking at Grandview, looking at Durango Mesa, potentially looking at the BLM, track this right there with Sail Barn, and then Horse Gulch, if there's an opportunity to roll out this program, Horse Gulch seems like low-hanging fruit, and working with community partners like Durango Trails to figure out how we could roll this out, I think could be an opportunity. So I just don't want people to think that we're just going to throw everything against the wall and see if we can get as much as we can. I think being intentional and very clear about how we're going to do that, I think is important. So that as an aside, but also I was talking to some friends who rode out in Moab recently, and he has a Class 1 e-bike, and he was saying that the BLM in Moab have worked in conjunction to open up some of those trails in Moab for all the BLM lands out there. Have you tracked down that at all?
I'm aware of that, yes. And so I think what the BLM did was look at all their lands. They had a lot of disconnected or not connected by e-bike for a lot of different parcels. So they opened up kind of the pieces in between that then could make those connections and get some length for e-bike riders to enjoy.
Sure.
Yeah.
From a mountain biking standpoint, I think that's a very pure community. So it'd be good to kind of see what they went through and what their community feedback was. So yeah, I'd love to be able to hear more about some of those things. But yeah, thank you again for taking all this time. And I know it's a very nuanced subject, and I appreciate you giving us all the updates you can. So thank you. Councilor Gonzalez.
So, is it possible to get a briefing from the Land Conservancy? Could that be part of a study session or something like that?
We could talk with them and see if she'd be available to do that. Yes.
Because that also is something that, I think, I know I would benefit, perhaps the community would benefit as well from education about their program and what our partnership looks like. So I think I might like that presentation if we can find a way to bring that in. I don't know if this is in the next briefing or whenever y'all, whatever seems appropriate for the timeline. So, I guess, I think that would be my main questions, how we can just continue to educate ourselves and continue to work those partnerships. Thank you. That's all
I will check with her and see what we can do.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Scott. Appreciate your time.
And Mayor and Council, we do have one more update. Mike French with our Prosperity Office is going to provide an update about our Prop 123 funding.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The city has reached a significant milestone. Last Thursday, we were informed by the Department of Local Affairs with the state that we have reached our Proposition 123 requirements and now qualify for the next 3 years of the program. So that includes the number of affordable units for the last 3 years, as well as the fast track process and planning for affordable housing. To describe the journey and give a little context, credit where credit's due, Cody Minnick from the Housing Division will talk about how we got there. I'd also like to acknowledge Brian Devine, who was in charge of Fast Track. We also are standing a little bit on the shoulders of people that started these projects 4 years ago who are not here today. So I want to give credit to those people. Cody.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, as he said, we were really excited to receive some notice from the state last week that we achieved full compliance with Proposition 123 for the 2024-2026 cycle. Like Mike said, what the compliance means is that we reached two significant milestones. First, we passed and codified expedited review or fast track review, which means that a qualifying affordable housing project will receive a determination within 90 days of application. The second milestone is that we grew our affordable housing stock by 3% annually or 9% over that 3-year period, which for the city equates to 184 units. Why this matters, maintaining eligibility, it allows us to maintain eligibility to crucial housing funds over the next 3 years. It's not just the city and our projects, but also our partners like Homespun and Housing Solutions also get to maintain those funds, and any developer who wants to access Proposition 123 funds within city limits requires us to meet those goals. This is a regional accomplishment. Now that the city has achieved this, all 4 of the jurisdictions in the La Plata Regional Housing Alliance have achieved full Prop 123 compliance. So that's La Plata County, the city, and the towns of Bayfield and Ignacio. You will see a press release announcing this accomplishment coming out from the RHA within the next week. And you're also going to see a press release from the state's Department of Local Affairs highlighting Durango specifically because us meeting this goal has actually pushed the state total over a 2,000 unit milestone, which is pretty huge. Up next, Brian and I are busy compiling and working on our 2027-2029 filing commitment. We plan to bring that back to you all once it's finalized and let you know the new unit count and our strategies and projects that will help us meet that goal. I just want to finish this update by thanking all of our partners that helped us achieve this. First and foremost, Homespun, Pam Moore and her team were really crucial in helping us document and report to the state all of the down payment assistance loans that were administered in the city over the last 3 years. Mana allowed us and gave us all the documentation to account their fourplex that they recently acquired. The school district, we worked with them to document all of the eligible units at the Lightner Creek Village apartments that they acquired. I want to thank all of the various partners that worked on the Residents at Durango project, and a special thank you to the county who we've worked really closely with over the last month for a final submission. We have split and shared units at the West Side Triangle mobile home parks. So with that, I stand for any questions you might have.
Just thank you for all your hard work and, keeping going. And obviously partners are super important and we can't do this alone. So thank you, Cody.
Councilor Yazzie.
Thank you so much, because it seems to be my only question every time you guys present a project is, does this meet Prop 123 requirements? Because people don't understand 3%, 3%, 3% continuously for what to 9% for like the duration of our contract. That's a major accomplishment, and it doesn't happen with one entity. So we've really worked hard with the RHA, which I'm part of, and we have a retreat tomorrow to make sure that all our partners work together to meet these goals, because long term, it really makes a difference when we can support each other and move workforce housing forward for our community. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Great. Excellent. Moving on to agenda item number 6, committee, board, and liaison reports. Councilor Lawyer.
Yeah, I had the Alliance board meeting on August 5th. Some of the key takeaways, the 4-H, they did a big paid internship program through the Alliance. And the woman who interned, or the girl, young woman who interned for 4-H gave a presentation on her learnings and how much the internship program meant for her, and she's getting ready to go to college. And it was a great success story, and we're going to try to raise funds to continue doing the internship program because it worked so well. One of the big things that we talked about was the Animas Air Park and La Posta strategic plan. It is finalized. They are required to present it to the tribe and the county before they release it. And so they're going to go through that process, but then it'll be released. And it's really important to continue down this path of the Animas Air Park, hopefully to unlock economic potential for our county for another 20 years. We've really lost a lot of growth over the past decade there. You know, there's been a ton of, you know, Montrose, for example, has gained over almost 1,200 new private jobs due to their economic growth and attainable housing programs that they've put into place. And so we really need to kind of step up and try to get there, because a lot of those big corporations are going to other places instead of coming here. So it's super important that we keep doing that. And yeah, the summit is in September. And so if you haven't gotten your ticket, go ahead and get that. It's one of the best professional development conferences in our region. So that's coming up. There you go.
Councilor Koso.
Yeah, just follow up on Councilor Lawyer, the light industrial. We've got a lot of homegrown Stone Age, agile industries. We could list off those folks who have been unable to grow further because of a lack of light industrial. So really important that we lean into the Animas Air Park or a light industrial park soon. Bodo was built out in the 2000s. We're about 20 years behind. So we need to figure that out. For myself, I attended last week the Housing, Hope, and Humanity Forum for the Unhoused. This is the third one that they've held. Highly encourage everybody to keep this out on your radar screen. This is real life experience for our unhoused community. And so a lot of individuals that have become housed and what the journey there, what they went through. So please look for those. And I think they're amazingly illustrative of what it takes to be unhoused in Durango these days. And then I had office hours today. So just wanted to read out the topics that were addressed there. So several attendees talked about e-bikes on city trails, improvement around bear-related enforcement and education in such a bad bear year. We're certainly seeing a lot of bear activity, and we could do more to do enforcement and education there. Promotion of citywide composting, multi-vehicle households parking 5, 6, 7 cars on city streets. The removal of Channel 9 from the Spectrum offerings and improving Colorado-based news in Durango, something that we've heard about before. Horse Gulch Trail Road transfer to City Parks and Rec for long-term maintenance. And then a long discussion on ICE and immigration ordinances and policies in line with Los Compañeros recommendations that came out last meeting, including mimicking successful efforts in Aurora and Denver. So I'll follow up with city staff on many of those topics and then circle back with the residents that I met. Thank you.
Excellent. I also had my community office hours 2 weeks ago. We had, had a lot of people show up, which was great. We talked about composting and climate study groups and how we can potentially do better as we are looking at the future of being more sustainable in our community. We talked about, bathrooms being locked up in the winter and how we could potentially maybe do some temporary restrooms. So as we're seeing some of these warmer temperatures in these shoulder seasons, after we winterize, that we can still have people to use facilities that are on site. Talked to some folks with the La Plata County Mounted Patrol. Talked about parking and what else? Oh yeah, we had people talk about bicyclists and some of those bicycle and car interactions. So overall, really good office hours. Additionally, been working with Councilor Gonzalez with some stakeholders on a surveillance policy. So that will be forthcoming as we work through some of the ins and outs of that. But other than that, pretty slow couple of weeks. And yeah, anybody else have anything for, Councilor Yazzie?
Thank you, Mayor. At any rate, you forgot that on Monday we had the URA board meeting and we successfully went forward with some of our projects there. But I went ahead and met with Fort Lewis College and they asked me if I would be a mentor up there for the presidential something. And so I agreed to do that. So I'll be bringing my mentee in on occasion to experience government here. I also today met with Courageous Colorado. They're a public service organization, and they just want to get more community involvement throughout all of Colorado. And I thought that their mission statement and the work that they're proposing to do with community groups was helpful for me to learn about. And tomorrow we have the RHA retreat, so we're still pushing forward on all the efforts that the city can do to promote affordable, attainable workforce housing for our residents. And I see that Brian's out there working really hard on it, of course, with Mike's leadership. So I do appreciate it. So thank you. That's about it.
Great, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7, public comment on items under consideration of adoption.
Public comment is encouraged on agenda items set for consideration and a vote by the council tonight. Public comments on items not set for consideration by the council come later in the meeting. Please begin your comments by stating the agenda item set for a vote you intend to speak on, your full name, and if you are a resident of the city of Durango. Make your comments directly to the council. Do not expect a response from the council or staff. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, unless modified by the council. Unused time is not transferable to other speakers. Comments must be specific to the item you identified when you began your comments. Profanity, hate speech, personally derogatory remarks, speech unrelated to the item you identified, or other speech that is disruptive to the meeting will be ruled out of order by the chair, and any remaining time will be forfeited by the speaker. Exceeding the time limit infringes on the rights of others and is out of order. Only a majority vote of the council can modify time limits. Please note, you must sign up prior to the mayor calling the item on the agenda. Signing up after the item is called will result in your name not being called to speak.
Thank you. And the first individual signed up to speak under public comment on agenda-related items is Dale Smith, and that's going to be for 8.3.4, which is a resolution authorizing the cost of living adjustment for the old hire police pensioners.
Mr. Mayor, council members, city manager, my name's Dale Smith. I live here in the city of Durango. I'm a retired captain from the Durango Police Department, and I'm here on behalf of myself and Captain Gary McKnight. Happens to be Captain McKnight and myself are the last 2 living members on this pension plan, and we also have 3 beneficiaries. We would like to thank you for your support of the cost of living adjustment and request, and it means a lot to all of us. So thank each one of you.
And then the next item in which 2 individuals are going to speak on is 8.3.5, which is a resolution authorizing the cost of living adjustment for the old hire fire pensioners. And the first individual is Tom Kaufman.
Mr. Mayor, Council, City Manager, I'm Tom Kaufman, retired Assistant Chief and Fire Marshal with the Durango Fire Department. I was with the department for 37 years before my retirement. I represent all the old hire pensioners, of which there are 4 left and one widow. On behalf of the 4 members, I would like to thank you for your support. I would have been at the first meeting when we met with Gloria from Finance, but unfortunately had a medical emergency and was flown to Denver for an open heart triple bypass. But I'm back and doing well, so thank you. I would also like to publicly thank Chief Bob Brahmer for helping spearhead this and getting things moved through the system. We kind of got left in the dust, it seems like a little bit. We typically go for our cost of living increase towards the first of the year, and something happened, but we got it all caught back up. So again, thank you for your support on getting us the cost of living increase.
And the next individual signed up to speak on the same item is Cristobal Garcia.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. My name is Cristobal Garcia. I'm also a retired firefighter from the city of Durango on the old hire fire pension plan. And let me just say, I am very grateful that I worked in an area when there were defined benefit pensions. Makes a huge difference in our lives. We are requesting this COLA because most of us, it is our only source of income due to the fact as public servants, we did not pay into FICA unless we worked second jobs. Also, if we did receive Social Security benefits, they were reduced by the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset that existed until recently. Additionally, if we did not qualify for Medicare at age 65 because we did not work under FICA, so I had to work 10 years post-retirement with the school district 9R to get fully qualified to even receive Medicare. Still, my Social Security benefit was not enough to cover my Medicare Part B. For the first 8 years of my retirement, I was paying more than half of my Medicare premium out of my personal funds. And then finally in 2023, during the last year of the Biden presidency, the Public Servants Fairness and Protection Act passed, and the government pension offset and windfall provision were eliminated. So I finally got enough Social Security to fully pay my Part B Medicare premiums plus an extra $100. But for everybody else that's on pension, it is our primary source of income. And I appreciate your support for this cost of living. It'll make a huge difference to our lives. Thank you.
And we have a handful of people signed up to speak under item 11.1, which is a resolution directing the city manager to pursue a remote parking variance for the use of the transit center parking lot and to evaluate off-site lease parking options to meet the parking requirements for the City Hall and Police Department project. The first individual signed up for this item is Libby Culver.
Hi, my name is Libby Culver, and I'm a part of the Boulevard Neighborhood Association, which encompasses 3rd, 4th, and 5th Avenues. I'm here to comment on Resolution 11.1. First, let me say that while there are conflicting opinions about the location of the police department, and there is increasing frustration of voting for a project that is significantly changed, I'm personally a strong supporter of the new City Hall and Police Department. So this is not a request to not have those buildings adjacent to our neighborhood. What I am concerned about is how the parking will affect our neighbors. We're a neighborhood of homeowners and renters, elderly, middle-aged, college students, and young families, folks who are able-bodied and those who have challenges with their mobility. In these respects, we're just like every other neighborhood in town. The difference for us is that in this oldest part of town, many homes do not have driveways or off-street parking, and we've been the free parking for decades for downtown businesses. Many people, many of my neighbors, are afraid to leave during the day for shopping, medical visits, or other activities because there won't be a place within a few blocks of their home when they return. With this new move for the city offices and police department, our neighbors on that end of the grid will be even more saturated with daytime parking. The Smiley building already brings cars into that area because that business does not provide enough parking spaces for its patrons. We do not believe that all city and PD employees will utilize the transit center due to its distance and human nature that often requires quick trips during lunch hours, running late in the morning, or needing to get somewhere quickly after work. We understand that reality for our friends who work in these new buildings. We were told that the city is short 83 parking spots on May 5th, 61 on June 2nd, and now today it's 60. Those discrepancies are significant because it's a steadily moving target, but even 60 is a huge number to be granting a variance for. What I'm asking at this point is to flip this two-part resolution so that the city manager must pursue the leasing and or partnership with other entities and have that be a contingency before relying on the transit center parking, as I see it as a last resort. I'm concerned that when the variance to use the transit center is granted, that nothing else will happen. I admit that this is a short-term solution, and I request that the city pursue long-term solutions as well. I hope you understand that I'm simply trying to advocate for the quality of life for our neighbors. I do believe that there are remedies available so that this project can go on while also honoring our neighborhood.
And the next individual signed up to speak for 11.1 is Dara Westrup.
Mayor, Council, my name is Dara Westrup, and I'm a resident of Durango, and I live down in the grid, just a few blocks away. I think it was just said very well, but my concern is that the proposed solution here isn't an actual solution. I really can't imagine anyone coming to work and taking a shuttle to the transit center instead of parking when you come before businesses are even open and parking is available, just a block away or around the corner. I just don't see it happening. And I believe that in the past, there's a consulting firm was hired to assess the parking here, and their conclusion wasn't that the parking space was the issue, but the management of the parking. And this feels like adding to that problem as opposed to actually solving anything. We are saturated downtown for sure. And when you think about 60 spaces more, I can't even imagine that. Thank you.
And the next person signed up to speak under 11.1 is Andrew Aitken.
Councilman, Mayor, my name is Andrew Aitken, and I live down in Durango, a few blocks from here. And Libby, thank you. That was very thoughtful and very eloquent. I'm not going to cover the same ground. I do want to share my real concern about the quality of life. If 60, 80, whatever the number of cars is the case, will be added to the grid. I fully agree that it is human nature that if there's a parking spot available nearby, that they will take advantage of that and not transit and not a shuttle from the transit center. We live over on 8th by the Gable House, and even though we're blocks off of Main in summer in particular, frequently we can't park in front of our house. Frequently, even on another street down, people are already parking and walking down to work in downtown. So adding another 60 or 80 cars is not a viable solution to this. So thank you for your time.
And the next person signed up to speak for 11.1 is Holly Jobson.
Greetings, Council, City Manager. It seems so apparent that the concept of having people go back and forth that distance is not going to work, and it will be very detrimental to the neighborhood. I live in the neighborhood. I am a Durango resident, and the thing it really points out to me is that the location of the police department on that property is just not functional. I know that what was approved in the bond issue was not this. It's not what we're looking at now. And this really needs to go back to a vote of the people for if we're making these kinds of changes, does the city support it? Because I'm pretty sure they don't. I know I don't. And I don't think we're doing the city any favors by proceeding with something that people are pushing ahead with just because we got the bond issue passed and we've got the money and we've got to use it by a certain time. We should be looking at what's really right for the city, what's really right for the community. And I think this parking issue just points once again to the fact that this is not a working location for the police department. Thank you.
The next individual signed up to speak for 11.1 is Carol Grenoble.
Good evening, councilors. I'm Carol Grenoble. I've lived in Durango for 50 years, and I live in the vicinity, very close vicinity of the police department and the city of Durango, and have endured parking issues for 50 years. And I'm hoping that City Council will really address the problem and not deny we have a problem. Because in the last 40 years, every city council we have addressed, and they have done absolutely nothing. So since February this year, the city staff has politely organized meetings and tried to keep our neighborhood informed as to what's going to happen and listen to our suggestions. Well, we suggested the following for them to consider. Number one was a joint venture with the county for a structure at the corner of 2nd and 11th Street, which geographically is a natural location, which is not as expensive as other sites could be for a structure. The second was to lease spaces in private lots, and if all else failed, to utilize city-owned space of current police station and city hall. The most viable long-term solution is to work with the county. Despite the city stating there in your communication with the county, you have not communicated with the county, despite the fact that you say it's in your resolution that you're working with it. I know for a fact that it was up until July 22nd, you had not communicated with the county. In my mind, this demonstrates the city didn't take this as a viable long-term solution. But yet in the resolution, it states they are in conversation with the county. The staff didn't take our suggestions seriously, but held public meetings with the appearance of listening and being transparent. I believe we would have more definitive data on the alternatives had the staff actually followed our suggestions. If the city is not concerned about the impact the variance will have on our neighborhood, perhaps they should think about the impact it will have on the staff utilizing a remote transit system to arrive on work at appropriate time. I say no on the variance until the city demonstrates a desire to finally address a parking issue of 40 years. Thank you.
The next individual signed up to speak on 11.1 is Karen Brucoli-Anisi.
That's Brooklyn. Looks like you guys have a big problem here. But you know, I think the big problem is you've got an empty transit center. And I think to fix that problem, you're going to be creating another problem that I think is going to have worse consequences, ones that you haven't identified yet. Look at why the transit center is empty. It's empty because people don't use it. So now I'm looking at it, if I were an employee, the city of Durango, and the person at the desk next to me gets to park in the parking lot, but I get to take the bus. And I'm 20 minutes late, and now I have that consequence. And then I have to go to the dentist, and then I have to get down to the transit center, and then I have to leave. And the first thing I'm going to do is say, well, two things. I'm going to find a way of parking where it's free and it's convenient, and I'm going to resent the other people who get to park in the parking lot. And I'm going to really resent the 5 people who made a decision that I wish they instead would have picked up the phone and had a cup of coffee with the county commissioners, because, you know, all of you share in the problem, and I think all of you can share in the solution, and I think you're all good people. And I would be really, really hesitant to do any kind of variance like this without exhausting all possibilities, and you have them, and you've heard a couple of them very well. The other thing that, you know, when I hear that there's no fiscal impact, you don't know what the fiscal impact is when someone says it's just not worth working for the city of Durango if they don't care enough about their employees to provide parking. So please, you know, these are public servants, and we want to make their jobs, they're working for us, and you're working for us, and you're smart people. So ask your people to go back to the drawing board and figure this one out, and you get involved. Please get involved. And I guess I want to end this, with some levity here, because I have a cartoon for you. It's actually a pretty good cartoon, yeah. But I don't speak well with my left hand, so let me just put my, oh God. Hold on, thank you. Got to put my glasses on here, and I only have 36 seconds here. Okay, I'm looking at a picture here, and it's a picture of a East 2nd Avenue parking lot. And I'm looking at a sign that says no parking. This space is reserved for the ThyssenKrupp elevator. But guess what? In this parking spot is a white SUV with a logo of the city of Durango. And it gets better. What are the words underneath this? Parking division. This is a bad idea, and it's not going to be enforced. You're not going to be able, you don't want to put dog trackers on your employees to find out where they're parking. Let's just come up with something a little better. Thank you. So I'm going to pass these out to you.
And the next individual signed up to speak for 11.1 is Greg Hoke.
Good evening. I'm speaking, I agree with everybody who's spoken so far on this topic with what they've said. I got a note right before I got here that somebody who intended to speak fell ill and asked me to read what they wanted to say. So I'm reading on behalf of Robin Wiles and Fred Grimes, both long-term 50-year residents of Durango, who both co-own a duplex at 1327 East 2nd Avenue, right catty corner, along with this family here, who's on right next door, from the old high school. The parking in the area is atrocious for a number of reasons, the matter becoming worse in the wintertime when the street, one of the steepest hills in Durango, ices over for the duration, causing a loss of even more parking. For years, my property, among others, has been burdened by the city's unwillingness to grant reasonable variances. If the city grants itself a parking variance, that door should then open for those in the hood struggling with similar issues. We are between a rock and a hard place with a duplex parking situation. We maintain an especially attractive place, keep rents reasonable, and will appreciate not being subjected to more traffic terrors and broken promises. The project got the go-ahead based on this project got the go-ahead based on the statement it would go forward only if adequate parking was found. This idea of the transit center is disingenuous. City employees, like all people, will take a space closest to work. This neighborhood then will further degrade. Thank you for your time in considering this request.
The next individual signed up to speak for 11.1 is Charles Shaw.
Hi there, Council. My name is Charles Shaw. I live in Durango. I guess I don't want to repeat any of the stuff that other people have mentioned, but what this is highlighting for me is that this site has so many problems, and it's not the project doesn't look at all like it looked when it was presented to the voters with underground parking and the lots on Second Avenue where the right here and where the police station are. We're going to be for other types of development. The irony is we've talked about affordable housing tonight, and these lots could have been used for that kind of stuff. So now we have a completely different project. Yes, it's still a city hall and a police station, but it doesn't have any of the benefits that were promised to the people originally. And it seems like this project is just getting worse and worse as time goes on. And even if you did provide parking, surface parking for this project, that's going to be another parking lot here, a possible parking lot where Schluter Flowers used to be, another parking lot. Is that really how we want this part of town to be developed, to surface parking? I know the city's pursuing parking down in the Midtown area that could be used for other commercial buildings down there. The city had a URA for the Midtown area. And now we're talking about taking potential business tax generating buildings and making city parking. Look, this project is not, and on top of all this, the city has a plan next year to remove all the parking on the west side of East 2nd Avenue adjacent to this project. So not only, so they're removing, I don't know, 14, 18 spots from East 2nd Avenue right next to this project, then going taxpayer money building parking lots here. It's just not, and then they're still saying this is a perfect site for this police station and city hall. I think it's clear this isn't a perfect site. And maybe this should go back to the voters and present what we're actually going to do, because what was presented to the voters is nothing like what is proposed right now. So anyway, I hope you'll consider that. And I think that's it. And I think you all need to restore some of the public trust that has been lost in this project with the Engage and the changing of the plan. And I think part of this crowd here and all the people who didn't show up, who would have liked to show up, honestly don't have faith in the process here that's been going on this project. So what about putting this back to the voters and giving us a chance to vote on what you're actually going to build? Thank you.
The next individual signed up to speak for 11.1 is Joanne Hards.
Good evening. My name is Joanne Hards. My husband and I live at 1154 East 4th Avenue, and since 1972 and 1979, respectively, we've been residents of Durango. My husband and I both oppose the resolution for so many of the reasons that the other speakers have stated as well. But primarily, we see the impact of parking from our home, and we have held ourselves to the standards by, we constructed an ADU on our property, and we made sure to provide parking for that unit. As well as for our home. We see the traffic and the parking that is impacted from the wonderful events that the city hosts at downtown, different parades, the Buckley, and it's increasing immensely in our town. And to hear the feel that the city wants to have growth in our community and businesses and providing, jobs and economic growth. Well, parking is certainly an issue, and traffic that we feel that the city is currently, there is a gap. So we implore that the council reviews this and considers and opposes this resolution as it is. Thank you.
The next individual signed up for 11.1 is Martha Evers.
resident in Durango, Martha Evers. And I just want to say thanks so much. The more I kind of involve myself in all this, I realize the difficulty of your jobs. So thank you. Once again, the city is backing. I do feel like you're missing the mark on this variance, though, I have to say. And once again, the city is backing a neighborhood into a corner because this resolution was just announced and changed in the last minute after promises were made to your electorate. Neighborhoods are familiar with this non-transparency since the city staff leaders chose to silence the residents' voices through elimination of your volunteer boards and commission. It's only banded us together. And we're now able to quickly disseminate emails through the neighborhoods and let residents know what is happening. What does the variance create with your relationships with residents? It's sowing a seed of distrust. When your promise is made and not kept, this allows people to not understand. It's confusing. With the city with the city moving to grant itself a variance, once again, they are setting a precedent for this to happen in all neighborhoods. It also seemingly demonstrates that your residents aren't as important as the city prioritizing its expediency of achieving its goals. The city claims in this agenda item report that they will continue to explore a partnership with the county, but our understanding is that it has not been explored. Answers. You have options to give those residents parking passes in the old neighborhood in front of their homes. They can have those parking passes on their cars. The county has an adequate parking lot close to the old high school. And we are hoping that you will start working with the county. It doesn't seem to be happening, and we hope that you will reconsider. Also, okay. I hope that you, with the police and the fire, that fire buildings, that you will consider Emmy Finley's proposal of how to work with selling public lands as this becomes about selling this building and the other building. She's done an amazing job. It's brilliant. I hope you look at it. I hope the Herald looks at it.
And there's one individual who signed up to speak under 11.2, which is a resolution expanding the interview teams for the Community Development Commission and the Financial Advisory Board to include any counselor who chooses to be included, and that'd be Sweetie Marbury.
Hello, my name is Sweetie Marbury, and I've been a resident of Durango for about 52 years. There's actually 3 issues that brought me down here tonight. First of all, I support 8.34 and 8.35. I support the $500 cost of living for our first responders. They gave their all to the city. And I remember the 1974 Main Mall fire, where a young policeman and a young fireman died because of arson. In the 90s, the fire department received a 10-cent raise. Keep that in mind, 10-cent raise. I urge you to honor the few living first responders by passing the $500 cost of living. I know Tom, I know Dale, and I know Chris. They all gave their best to Durango. I believe if we take care of employees, they will take care of our city. Second, I do support the new city hall and the placement of the police department. And I support the variance for parking at the transit center. But I'm urging the staff to have dire consequences for any employee caught parking in the neighborhoods. The residents on the east side, they don't trust the city to enforce the parking. Therefore, the staff has to come up with very strict consequences for any employee caught parking in those neighborhoods with the decal on their cars. I urge the staff to demonstrate support for the neighbors by keeping employees out of the neighborhoods. Satellite parking is a common occurrence for most of us, and the transit center is owned by the city, and I'm urging you to use it. Third, as a former mayor, all 5 of my city councilors interviewed residents for city boards. I agree with City Councilor Coso that the City Council should be involved with these 2 very vital boards, the Finance Board and the Planning Commission, because they make very serious decisions for the city. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ben. And then could I please get a reading of the consent agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. On tonight's consent agenda, under 8.1, approval of meeting minutes, we have approval of the minutes of the City Council regular meeting from August 4th, 2026. There are no final reading of ordinances. Under 8.3, adoption of resolutions by consent, 8.3.1 is a resolution approving a letter of support for a Proposition 123 grant application by Elevation Community Land Trust and authorizing the mayor to sign. 8.3.2 is a resolution granting an access and drainage easement on the city property at 545 Wilson Gulch Drive to Durango Fire Protection District. 8.3.3 is a resolution supporting an agreement with the State Board of the Great Outdoors Colorado Trust Fund for the Durango Mesa Park Connecting People, Recreation, and Nature project. 8.3.4 is a resolution authorizing the cost of living adjustment for the old hire police pensioners, and 8.3.5 is a resolution authorizing the cost of living adjustment for the old hire fire pensioners. There are no items under approval of other administrative items, no items for request for public hearing, no items for introduction of ordinance, and no items for request for excused absences.
Excellent, thank you. Would anybody like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
So sorry, I was just talking. Pull off the consent agenda 8.3.3, 8.3.4, and 8.3.5 for discussion, please.
I'd like to make a motion before you second. I'm going to make a motion to approve the consent agenda last 8.3.3, 8.3.4, and 8.3.5.
Discussion? Can I get a roll call, please?
Oh, me too, Gilda. I did the same thing.
That confirms.
The motion passes. All in favor: Dave Woodruff, Shirley Gonzalez, Kip Coso, Jessica Lawyer, Gilda Yazzie.
All right.
Excuse me, item 8.3.3 is a resolution supporting an agreement with the State Board of the Great Outdoors Colorado Trust Fund for the Durango Mesa Park Connecting People, Recreation, and Nature project.
You're fine. Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution supporting an agreement with the State Board of the Great Outdoors Colorado Trust Fund for the Durango Mesa Park Connecting People, Recreation, and Nature project.
Second. Discussion.
Thanks for doing that. Council, I wanted to bring up the fact that we're seeking 3.4 million in GOCO funds. I think going forward with this makes a lot of sense. I like the development that's happening, but I'm getting more and more concerned about the long-term maintenance costs of the amenities that we're building, and this has been brought up by Councilor Yazzie as well in the past. So I wanted to have a little bit of discussion around the development of some kind of a business plan for the revenue side of Durango Mesa. So as this might be percolating through GOCO and being worked on, I would love to see us take a little bit more aggressive stance on trying to determine what kind of revenue is going to be offsetting these costs as we move forward. The amenities that are going to be built from this, as shared by Scott in an email, this is going to be an awful lot of bike park, small event, lawn space, playgrounds, parking areas, dog parks, disc golf, and then campground. Only one of those tends to be revenue generating on the campground side. And so again, I want things to move forward. We've got an incredible blessing with the Durango Mesa, and I appreciate all the work that Parks and Rec is going into. But we seem to keep kind of raising up what's these revenue costs, what do these new amenities going to cost us? And then after seeing from last meeting that in 2027, 2/3 of the revenue for Parks and Rec coming from the 2015 tax fund is going to maintenance. We're becoming more and more dependent on ballot measures to be passed to maintain these amenities that we're building right now. And I really don't want to get us painted into a corner where we have to pass a ballot measure or we can't do any maintenance on some of these amenities in incoming years. So open to discussion. I know this is a little bit of a not the usual here, but I was hoping to just talk a little bit about trying to look harder at the revenues coming from Durango Mesa.
I feel like when we were one of the presentations, and it could be before Councilor Cosa was on, so I don't remember. We had a presentation about that exact, like there wasn't exact numbers with maintenance, but I remember Moira and potentially talking about their board's intentions on maintenance and what they had funded, or was that, am I making that up?
I can't, not rubbing off the top of my head about that presentation, but I do know, and Scott's here to correct me if I happen to be wrong, but Scott's having active conversations with Moira and the Durango Mesa Park Foundation, because it's a joint partnership of what that long-term maintenance support looks like and what are the responsibilities going to be expected of the city as well as expected of Durango Mesa Park Foundation. So those conversations are ongoing. We just don't have anything to report back specifically as how that plan would work.
You said that and then I remembered. So I do remember now, because it was when originally it was the city, county, and Durango Mesa Park. And there was a whole like funding, like where we all said we were going to potentially do this amount of money and then this amount of money going forward with the potential maintenance, I thought as well. So I think it's not all on our shoulders. It's a joint effort or whatever, but obviously as things get built, that'll change. And so maybe for me anyways, it would be a good like study session in the future. Once you've had those conversations and you feel like there's a path to present. Yes, I think it is important. I think we've talked about it since I've been on council. I remember Barbara and Kim very adamant about maintenance costs not coming out of these
Yes,
taxes.
as soon as we would have a final business plan or recommended, or at least something to present to council, that would absolutely be something we would do, because obviously it would have a financial impact and wanting to make sure we get input on.
I was hoping, I guess, to have a fairly decent one before we accepted 3.4 million to build out the amenities. I'd hate to go through the process of accepting the grant. And if I have it right, we would be applying for the grant. It's got to go through GOCO, and then we still have to vote to accept the grant. Is that correct? That makes sense. Sorry.
Say the question again.
Sure. No, I'm assuming that we've got a couple of steps here still. We're approving the application to GOCO. GOCO goes through their process, months, maybe, who knows what that is. And then you would be coming back to accept that grant if it was awarded to us.
So correct. We will get the conditions of the grant that we would bring back, and then it's based on, in the resolution, the annual appropriation for the project. The project that we're applying for grant funds for is the bike park development, which is the 3 phases. The one that we're currently have funds appropriated for this year and are working on, and then the next 2 years. So it's just looking for grant funding to help finish that project commitment we've essentially made with Durango Mesa Park at this point. But are working on an operations maintenance plan with the foundation on revenue source and what that can look like, so we can offset some of those operations maintenance costs as we move forward. And the Durango Mesa has the vision of it being accessible, but also we have some ideas on special events and looking at service fees for tickets or parking fees or things like that would help offset the maintenance and the day-to-day use.
Okay, and I understand everything that's in works. I thought your email was very clear on those pieces. Again, it's just how robust of a revenue analysis will we have before we start agreeing to 3.7 million or whatever we're talking about here. So just wanted to bring that up. I don't know if any other council members have any other.
Councilor Yazzie?
Well, I'm in total agreement that we need to think about long-term maintenance with Durango Mesa Park. And I think it's a good idea to have a study session on that, but we're going to go through forward with whatever agreement we work out with the foundation up there. But at this point, I'm advocating to approve this resolution because we still have to get the park built before we can think about maintenance. But COSO is correct that a lot of our funding is going to go to maintenance long-term because we've been doing a lot of building without thinking about the long-term impact of maintenance. You know, and a lot of the projects, some of these things are unfunded mandates, you know, so we need to tighten the purse strings a little bit. That's all I have.
Councilor Lawyer.
Just real quick, we have spent a significant amount of resources and funding on the infrastructure, on getting this going, on this vision of Durango Mesa Park. I think there's huge support for it in our community. I think going after grants like this will help offset some of those costs. I do think it's important that we do have a maintenance plan and we're thinking about it, which I believe we are, and we have been since the very beginning, just from talks. I mean, I haven't seen the numbers like you, but so I do think it's important. However, I am full support of going after this money and completing this vision, and then also finding, you know, sustainable funding sources and being creative. So thank you.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Thank you. And so this grant is only for capital expenditures?
Correct.
Okay. And are there other grants that are for maintenance or for operations? I know that's often a concern, I think, in transportation.
I'm not aware of any, and Great Outdoors Colorado is not. Those typically go to amenities that provide for the community.
Can you repeat that, please?
That Great Outdoors Colorado, their grants go to development or purchase of land for enjoyment by the community, but not for the operations and the ongoing maintenance.
Not for operations, or okay. Are there grants that will provide for operations and maintenance?
Not that I am aware of, no.
Okay, I know. I feel like that is always a problem, is that nobody wants to pay for operations and maintenance. It's perhaps not as exciting to maintain as it is to build. So, well, I mean, I'm fully supportive, and I know we'll have to always be in mind. I mean, I think the operations and the maintenance is the long-term impact that I think we'll have on our budget as we proceed. So, but bond dollars can be used for maintenance or only for capital as well?
We don't have any bond dollars in Parks and Recreation. It's sales tax?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I believe that's in the ballot language for maintenance. And
It is.
in some of them, depending on which one specifically you're talking about.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, great. Thanks very much. Any other further conversation? All right, can you get a roll call, please?
The motion passes. All in favor: Jessica Lawyer, Kip Koso, Dave Woodruff, Shirley Gonzalez, Gilda Yazzie.
And the next item pulled from the consent agenda was 8.3.4, which is a resolution authorizing the cost of living adjustment for the old hire police pensioners.
Make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the cost of living adjustment for the old hire police pensioners.
Second.
Thanks for answering some questions. And Tom, I may need to lean in on you here for some of the history. I'm just kind of ignorant on the past on this and the ways that we got to where we're at. So I just wanted to ask a couple of follow-up questions. In 1978, do we know how many police or firefighters? And almost all of my questions are going to apply to both populations at the same time. So we'll get all the questions for both taken care of. But do we know how many police and firefighters were on a system before 1978, and then how many years they served post 1978?
I do not have that information. I apologize, but I can see if we can find it. I did include in the slide presentation in the packet the current membership data, and I think it included the last 3 years. those who are currently on the plan, but I do not have a number for the who was hired at that time and included in the pension.
Okay. From my way of thinking here, we've got 50 some odd years since 1978 happened. I'm just trying to determine if they were on city payroll and a normal system after 1978. But it sounded like when Chris was up here that they were not, that they still had limitations on their benefits, their payments into Medicare, FICA, all the rest of those things.
Correct. They
Is that
did not
correct?
pay into Social Security, Medicare. So they did not receive, they could have received those benefits if they had other jobs, as mentioned in the comments, a second job, or after they retired, then they paid into Social Security, then they may have had some benefits, but of course their main job throughout that they retired from, they did not pay into those.
Okay. And that's post 1978.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's a great answer. Has there been any discussion on why this is not an automatic increase connected to the rate of inflation for the previous year and starting on January 1st? Like, it seems to me like we keep coming up with a raw number, 300, 400, 500, and instead of trying to attach this to whatever the rate of inflation is, a COLA typically is connected back to some kind of keeping up with inflation rate. So has there been any discussion on not necessarily granting 300 or 400, but instead tying it to inflation that starts on January 1st of each year?
I do believe the plan was set up to be based on a flat dollar amount of a COLA. So it's not tied to any percentage. Of course, you could use a percentage and calculate what flat amount that might be. But I believe it is the way that the plan was set up itself. I did have a reference to the overall COLAs on each of the actuary plans. It's on page 23 where it shows the history of the COLA adjustments. And I did pass along information that the last one was in 2025 and the amount of $300. That was a little bit misleading because it was actually for 2024. So the actuarial plan is completed every 2 years. And so that is how it is reviewed on a 2-year basis. And so prior to the $300 increase for the 2024 year, the 5 2-year periods before that, there was a $150 increase applied to those years.
Okay, so let me just be clear on this one. So the 150 was to apply over the course of 2 years.
Correct.
Okay, and by my math, 300 came out somewhere around 5% for the lowest beneficiary, and it came out to 10% for the lowest beneficiary, 5% for the highest beneficiary. If it's over the course of 2 years, I'd have those numbers. I know I'm throwing this out to you, but it does seem like in some ways they've been shorted what inflation should have given them over the course of 2 years if they were only given 150 or something for those 2 years. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay.
Again, I believe this is the way the plan is structured, and without adding these ad hoc COLAs, there would be no COLA adjustment in the plan.
Yeah. I guess I would like to propose to council that we table this for the purposes of going back and reestablishing this as a formula that happens on January 1st each year that's tied to inflation, and then take any recommendation from the board if they feel like that is insufficient at that time. But the just raw number just doesn't make sense to me. And I don't have any objections to passing something to play catch up here, because it feels like if it's every 2 years, there's been a problem. But I do have a problem that we just randomly come back and ask for 300, 400, 500. So.
Councilor Yazzie. No, there's no motion. There's motion's already, yeah, we're still discussing.
Gloria, thank you for doing all the research on this, and I did read your documents. Do we know why the previous councils didn't recognize this was a problem?
Again, I think it's just based on the structure of the plan, and every 2 years, the actuarial study really looks at the contributions that the city has made and the longevity rate of the pensioners, and projects that out in order to determine our contributions for the next 2 years. And their goal is really to keep those contributions stable. And so they do not, there's no COLA built in. And I do not know I mean, I do think there is some flexibility that the council has, but we would have to get with our actuary to see exactly how that would work. They would have to project those numbers.
Alrighty, and another thing, I would like to see the original documents of what we do owe for their pension requirements. You know, if that's possible.
So we do publish that in our act for every year, and that is included in the actuarial study of what our unfunded liability is. I believe it was in the presentation, and we are funded currently at, with the police pension, we're funded at 44%, and with the fire, we are funded at, I think it's 56%.
Alrighty, so my last question is, well, how come this has to come out of the city general fund? Why won't it come out of the fire department and also the PD's funds, since these are their employees?
So these were the employees of the city, and this was before the fire was moved away from the city, from a city. It was a city department at this time.
And you think that's a sufficient reason why it shouldn't come out of their pocket than ours?
So the pension, it is a city pension, and we do fund the pension for the employees that work for the city.
Okay, do you think that this COLA adjustment for the resolution here is on the same level as what the current employees get now on their COLA?
The current employees who are still working, or for any who
Yeah,
are
the
retired?
current city employees.
No, current city employees are we usually do around 3% a year. So again, these are, there's a bit of a difference when, you go into retirement and pull your pension. Usually you're not getting the same amount as what you receive for a salary. Many times it's a lot less. I don't have the comparisons of what those salary numbers were in comparison to what they're receiving. I did put in the packet in that membership data. It does show the average benefits for those few pensioners who are remaining on the plan.
Okay, I do feel like there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered, and that I do think that one of the suggestions that Kip made is very valid at this point, that we set up a system where we can rely upon what the number's going to be every fiscal year.
And one reason so this was visited, or this was given to the council for approval in 2025 and 2026. So even though we were a little bit late in bringing this to the council with the process, we had some turnover. I was new, and Faye and Bob, as mentioned in the comments, did help me along with that process. But also last year, I guess, probably likely to the turnover, it was brought at the end of the year because it was in January 2025 for the 2024 plan year. And so we're kind of catching that up, I believe.
Thank you.
Councilor Lawyer.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, and maybe some help might be, if that's possible. It was like my first or second year on council, and the old fire and old police came to us with a request for a COLA that we typically hadn't done it before, but then they came to us for a request. Is that correct?
They did come to us for a request. I think maybe we might have missed a couple years, but I don't know if it was like we hadn't done one before, but I think we were behind and they saw that employees had got a cost of living adjustment and had requested same consideration for a cost of living adjustment for their pension funds.
And then the request was made by them though for the flat amount. Did we say we want to give them a flat amount, or did they request the flat amount?
They requested, I believe, the flat amount.
That's what I thought.
It's that actuarial service, which is a little different because it's a pension and not a straight salary that somebody's drawing. So there's effects as to what you do with when you increase that and what that does with your liability as it moves forward. So they commission a study, I believe, every 2 years. It looks at 300, 400, and 500 a month. And based on that, they make a recommendation. The recommendation this year from the board was 500.
And this is brought by the board, which is you and 2 other people or whatever is on the board. Is that correct? Yeah. And you guys do the study and you bring it forward. So I'm supportive of that. I've supported the adjustments every year. I support us getting caught up and doing this at least. I would appreciate maybe during the budget, if that seems makes sense, to help us plan a little bit more and to stay on top of it and for it to like be a part of, if you can, and I know, let's add some more to your plate during the budget. That sounds great. But like doing some research around what other similar, pension plans do. Is it automatic annual? Is it a percentage based on COLA? Is it a flat amount? Can you do some research based upon, and then maybe having that so we can budget and plan out for it, and it's not them bringing it to us would be good if that works for them too. I want to take into consideration what they would like as well. I mean, we're all being conscious of, fiscally responsible and all the things, but I'm happy to look at other options, but I'm supportive of approving this now and then potentially looking at a more streamlined way if it makes sense and it's supported.
Councilor Grosso.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this for discussion at the next city council meeting with the goal of getting a little bit more education on this, and no slight to anybody, but I do feel like a COLA is all about tying it to inflation, ensuring that we're matching that cost increase for these folks. And then I would like a little bit more discussion on what any extra might look like. The board comes back. I think I can motion to table in the middle of this.
So motion table takes precedence. It's a simple majority to pass, and it's not debatable. In other words, you don't debate if it's a good idea or not. You just vote whether you support it or not.
Okay, so.
No, you have.
But hold on. But he made a motion. Doesn't he need a second, or is it? Okay, so there's no second. I'd like to get Shirley's opinion before we move to table, please. Councilor Gonzalez.
Well, the motion to table. Okay. Thank you. It was really just a simple comment. And I'm fully supportive of the previous motion on the table, mostly because there's just not that many people. I think, if it were a lot of people and we knew that, there was this problem with the cost of living adjustment, I think it would make sense to go through that whole exercise. But it seems as, just with the few people that are left and are even willing to go through the exercise, because it can be quite time consuming for the members, that, I was supportive with the motion on the floor. So defer. Thank you, Mayor.
I second Kip's tabling.
Okay. All right. Get a roll call, please.
Three, in favor, Kip Koso, Dave Woodruff, Gilda Yazzie. 2, opposed, Jessica Lawyer, Shirley Gonzalez.
So under the rules, the table motion passes and it will go to the September 1st meeting. Unless you want to add a date further out.
Unless you felt that was too quick.
I was just going to ask, will there be clarification as to what you want me to bring back?
Yeah, would like to look at the implications of tying this to inflation starting on the January 1st of each year, and allowing the board to come back with a request for anything additional on top of that. But I'm mostly interested in an automatic piece that is tied to inflation that gives them the money at the very beginning of the year.
Gloria, do you know just an estimated timeline, just to kind of give them an idea of where you think you'd be able to be in a position to bring this back? September might be quick, but I'm not.
We just need to reach out to the actuary who completes all of this data for us and who does the calculations and calculates the contributions to see what kind of effect, to get the data that you're asking for. So just as a point of reference, we did meet with the old hire boards in April, and we just received the study information back to where we could bring it to you tonight.
months of deferring their payments.
So does that mean that we would not give them a 2026 adjustment with this, or? Oh.
Do this now, give them this, and then come back, like, let's do it during the budget, or like.
So they won't get a 2026 cost of living adjustment?
Recovered here.
So this is the recommendation for the 2026 adjustment. Yes. So they would not get an adjustment until this is voted on by council.
So we're working on the last adjustment, which we gave them, what, $300,
In 2025.
2023. I think with 2023, we gave them $300.
Well,
we gave them- that's what we're still working on.
2022, they received
We're working on now.
150.
That's what they're, currently, that's what they get.
What's the recourse here? Because I do not like withholding money from these folks that,
So procedurally, you're kind of in no man's land under Robert's rules right now. You've tabled it till September 1st. My suggestion would be you come back on September 1st. If you don't have an answer then you make a decision then that fits the facts. If you want to fund them, you've got an opportunity to do it in 2 weeks, pending what's been suggested at a later meeting when you have full information. You can also reconsider your motion to table if you don't want to table it, but that takes a super.
Who has to reconsider it? Does Kip or can anyone?
Anyone can do it, but it requires a supermajority.
I'd like to reconsider tabling the motion.
second,
That's not debatable either. You just vote.
can you get a roll call, please?
So wait, do I?
So
Consider yes to.
to reopen it?
Untable it.
You move to reconsider tabling the motion. So if that passes, the motion's back on the floor.
Okay, great. All right, just want to be clear before I know, I was like, wait, how do
So we can still seek.
I'll read you mine. Read you the.
All right.
I'll
just needed to
do a
verify.
no vote on that.
To include. Like I kind of talked.
To revote, guys.
Oh, again,
We're revoting?
yeah, because.
The motion passes. 4 in favor, Jessica Lawyer, Dave Woodruff, Kip Koso, Shirley Gonzalez. 1 opposed, Gilda Yazzie.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the cost of living adjustment for the old hire police pensioners with the addition that we research and look into standardized percentage cost of living adjustments for January 1, 2027 and beyond, and research around that and if it works with for the board and so on. At the what do you, or
what they
this
came
is
to
what
us.
this is approving what they came to us with. And then for future items, looking at research around cost of living.
Making this a permanent adjustment every fiscal year?
So that's what
or-
we're gonna, they come back when she can get the information that Kip had requested, come back to us for future.
So you have an amended motion on the floor that includes the original request by the pension people, with the amendment being that you consider a more permanent funding formula when the staff can have the information to do it. So that's the amended motion. It isn't on the floor yet because it needs a second, but that's what she's offered.
Second. Discussion? Councilor Koso.
I'm not comfortable doing $500 without, I mean, the $500 from my calculations is a 9% jump to a 16% jump. That's way over inflation. So yeah, I'll just state that. Thank you.
Councilor Yazzie.
I also feel like, giving them a whole lot of money and plus what? 136,000 extra is a little bit too much. I think we need to revisit a different figure, even the 300, since we gave them 300 in 2023-4 is excessive to add 500 to that, because that's per person times 12 plus 100,000 more on top of that. It's a lot of money.
Any other discussion? Let's go. So,
Mayor, Councilor Yazzie, I think where I'd like to go with this is to grant the 500 and then play catch up when we understand what the inflation adjustment might cost in 2027. And I don't know.
I think that was my understanding of the ordinance.
Yeah. So
we proposed.
I guess I just wanted to talk that out a little bit, but passing this ordinance just gets us to reset. I think we're dragging them through a readjustment of the process, and it doesn't feel like that's a great way to go with this meeting. So just wanted to share that anyway. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, can I get a roll call, please?
The motion passes. 4 in favor, Jessica Lawyer, Dave Woodruff, Kip Koso, Shirley Gonzalez. 1 opposed, Gilda Yazzie.
And so the third item pulled from the consent agenda is 8.3.5, a resolution authorizing the cost of living adjustment for the old higher fire pensioners.
Make a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the cost of living adjustment for the old fire pensioners, with the same caveat that we come when we have the information for a potential January 1, 2027 cost of living adjustment on a schedule where we all.
Better formula.
Yeah, better formula. We can all plan it as long as everyone's on board.
Second.
Yeah.
All right. Can I get a roll call, please? Oh, I'm sorry. Any discussion first? All right, roll call, please.
The motion passes. 4 in favor, Dave Woodruff, Kip Koso, Jessica Lawyer, Shirley Gonzalez. 1 opposed, Gilda Yazzie.
All right, nothing under public hearings, and then moving on to agenda item number 11, resolutions.
Thank you, Mayor. Under resolutions, we have 11.1, a resolution directing the city manager to pursue a remote parking variance for the use of the transit center parking lot and to evaluate off-site lease parking options to meet the parking requirements for the city hall and police department project.
Good. My watch just told me it was time to move. So I appreciate the opportunity to be up here. Erin Heider, Assistant City Manager, joined this evening by Bob Brammer, Assistant City Manager. So good evening, Mayor and Council. We are here to present the resolution directing the City Manager to pursue a remote parking variance for the use of the Transit Center parking lot and to evaluate off-site lease parking options to meet the parking requirements for the City Hall and Police Department project. This resolution follows up on the parking options presented to Council in June and provides direction to move forward, supporting the timely submission of the project's site plan. This resolution supports the city's strategic goal area of reliable infrastructure and community connectivity. As we continue to advance the City Hall and Police Department project, we are focused on identifying a parking solution that meets the project's parking requirements while also balancing community feedback and minimizing impacts on the surrounding residential neighborhood. So we want to spend a little bit of time recapping the history of the parking component of the City Hall and Police Department project. There is a lot of information on this slide, but the illustrations provide a refresher of the parking conversations and considerations that have taken place over time. As the timeline in the middle illustrates, staff and our project partners have explored multiple options, commissioned 3 parking studies, and conducted community outreach to determine the best path forward. As you know, the original conceptual plan for the project, including a parking structure, At that time, we also communicated if that parking structure would not be viable, we would come back to the community and council with potential site layout updates and alternative options for meeting the project's parking requirements. We did that work over last winter and early spring. The initial option related to the alternative parking option or solution identified was to repurpose this existing City Hall and PD site and these properties for parking. Both sites are within the required quarter-mile radius and could help satisfy the parking requirement. However, through our community meetings, we clearly heard, as we also heard tonight, that there's a strong belief that these properties have a higher and better use and can contribute more significantly to the continued prosperity and development of the downtown area than if they were used for surface parking. So to recap the options we presented to council in June, those included, like I mentioned, the reuse of the existing City Hall and Police Department sites, a remote parking variance to allow use of the transit center, use of the Mason Center and other city-owned lots, leasing spaces in privately owned off-site parking lots, a variance for the entire 60 space requirement, effectively waiving the parking requirement for the project, and a longer-term parking solution, parking structure solution, I should say. Following that meeting in June, we removed 3 options for further exploration that I just listed. That was the existing City Hall and Police Department spot, the Mason Center, and the full 60 space parking variance request. So since then, staff and our project partners have continued to develop the remaining options. So this slide has been previously presented to council. It provides a recap of the parking requirements of the project, the total number of spaces required, and the number of spaces that can be accommodate within the current project scope. So as you can see here, well, and one thing I want to clarify, in the both buildings, City Hall and Police Department, the total number of folks that'll be working in both of those buildings are effectively the same as they are now, except we'll be adding, I believe, 4 Parks and Rec employees in the City Hall. So the number of employees working in these spaces currently, this location PD and 900 Main, will be the same number approximately in the new site also. So the number of employees working there does not dramatically increase, nor does the number of cars or vehicles that are currently being parked in this general area change or increase significantly. So you can see here that the City Hall by code requires 31 spots, the PD 108, gives you 139 with a 79 that are provided on site, leaving us with the 60 space parking gap that you see illustrated here. As we mentioned before, the Land Use and Development Code provides a mechanism for addressing that gap through off-site or remote parking located within a quarter mile of the project site. That provision gives projects flexibility to look beyond the immediate project campus and identifying parking solutions that meet the project's requirements while also, what is going on here? Okay, here we go. We'll just go here. So that gives us, so I'm going to go back to the flexibility to look for solutions while still meeting the broader goals of the downtown community and the project. So let's jump into our 3 components to meet the project parking requirements. So in working in partnership with our project team and our community partners, we have identified these 3 components that would collectively address the remaining parking requirement. I'll provide an overview here, and then I'll hand it over to Bob, who will jump in and provide more detail on each of these in the following slides. So component 1, we are seeking a variance through the Board of Adjustment to allow the use of the Durango Transit Center parking lot. That request is on the agenda for consideration on August 31st. Component 2, we are continuing discussions with La Plata County regarding a potential lease and future joint project at 1061 East 2nd Avenue, also known as the Schluter Floral Lot. And component 3, We are actively negotiating a long-term lease at another offsite location within the prescribed quarter-mile radius with the potential option to purchase the property in the future. This lease option here is the most we looked at between 12 and 15 different properties that could potentially be utilized for shared or leased parking spaces. And this one here is the most promising option that we're presenting tonight. Together, these three components provide a path for a short, mid, and long-term solution to meet the parking requirements of the new City Hall and Police Department project. Use that button.
Thank you. So good afternoon, Council. Bob Rammer, Assistant City Manager. So of these options, we have evaluated the Durango Transit Center parking lot as currently the most viable option for addressing the parking gap. There are several reasons for this. First, the property is city-owned. Second, there's demonstrated parking availability at the transit center. And third, this option has the capacity to fully address the current parking gap. There's one challenge. The transit center is approximately 430 feet beyond the distance allowed by the LUDC for remote parking. As a result, the variance is required. The variance request has been drafted and, as mentioned, is scheduled to be considered by the Board of Adjustments on August 31st. As previously presented to Council, this slide provides a recap of the parking availability at the transit center from 2019 to 2025 and its ability to help meet the project's parking requirements. As the data demonstrates, there has historically been sufficient capacity at the transit center to accommodate the proposed use. The number of spaces we consider falls within the available capacity reflected in this historical averages. The green line is the 60 spaces needed. The black line is the average availability. The number at the bottom of each of these bars is the lowest monthly availability, and the top is the most availability at those. This gives us confidence that the transit center can be addressed to help address the project's parking requirements without creating unreasonable impact on existing transit center users. We also recognize that securing the required parking spaces is only part of the solution. We understand the concern that for employees, for convenience sake, may still want to park in the neighborhood. While the transit center is approximately 8 to 9 minute walk from the campus, here are 3 areas that we are working to support the convenient use of designing a designated parking spot at the transit center. So we're looking at a coordinated shuttle service from the transit center to the campus, providing bike share options to reduce the travel time to 1 to 2 minutes from the transit center to the campus, and then placing in our personnel policies the parking outside the designated parking areas will result in disciplinary process. That process and that policy, we feel we can address that pretty easily and just make that standard very clear to our employees who are going to be working in this area. Component number 1 is our approach is obtaining an approval from the Board of Adjustments to allow the transit center to be used for this purpose, given that it is located outside of 1/4 mile requirement. As previously discussed, there are several advantages to this approach. It utilizes city-owned property, it takes advantage of existing parking capacity, and it provides a solution capable of addressing the entire 60 space gap. It is also the option that can be implemented without requiring additional property to the city. Component number 2 is our potential partnership with La Plata County. And this is not a new concept that we've been working with the county. This has been in conversation since 2009. There's actually a draft set of plans that the city and the county worked on at that time. And working with the county manager over this time, we've discovered that, and she's pulled that out, and we've looked at that again as well. But the city and the county are discussing what the partnership could look like, as both organizations have an interest in finding a solution to our prospective parking needs. There is significant potential benefit to working together at the 1061 East 2nd Avenue location. We are actively engaging in discussions with the county and will continue to explore whether this mutual benefit arrangement can be developed. And just for clarity, based off of the public comment that I did here, is I've been speaking to the county manager since June, since we passed the initial resolution, directing staff in order to pursue these different options. And my last conversation with the county manager was on Thursday. Yes. And component number 3 is currently in active negotiations. Working with our owners' representatives, we are in discussion with the local property owner regarding a potential long-term parking lease with an option to purchase that property in the future. This option could provide the city with additional long-term flexibility and potentially create an opportunity for future ownership. This option also provides additional parking for the public in neighborhoods after hours, weekends, and holidays. It is important to note that if we are successful in bringing components number 2 and number 3 to fruition, our reliance on the transit center could be reduced and potentially eliminated altogether. However, both options require additional time to develop and reach a point where they can serve as viable solutions. And that's why it's so important that we get this variance through the Board of Adjustments to give us that time. For that reason, pursuing the transit center variance now provides the city with an immediate and reliable path forward while we continue to evaluate the longer term opportunities. Additionally, submission of the major site plan requires us to have a solution in place, which the variance of the transit center suffices for. Here's our vision and alignment slide. The proposed aligns with the city's vision and strategic priorities. Throughout the planning and development of this project, we have listened extensively to our community and continue to refine our approach in response to that feedback. We remain focused on identifying solutions that are practical, reasonable, and responsive to the priorities that we've heard. We also recognize that today the city vehicles and employees utilize on-street parking both downtown and within the surrounding residential neighborhoods. That existing impact is an important part of this conversation as we've continued to explore these options. Each of these options we are considering provides an opportunity to move the city vehicles and employees parking from the on-street spaces into designated off-street locations. Collectively, those changes can make a meaningful difference by freeing up the on-street parking for residents, businesses, customers, and downtown users. And also to note, in 2023, we conducted a study with PST Engineering, and that study identified that just by this move and moving our vehicles off-street, that's going to free up about 100 spaces. And I've got breakdowns of that. So right now we have 29 designated spots at the police department. They're just designated on 2nd Avenue and on 10th Street. There's 9 at City Hall, which are they're preserved for just on the side there for us as well through permitted parking. And on 12th and 9th Street, also there's permitted parking that's reserved for the city employees. So, and then also the police department typically parks on 3rd Avenue, 4th Avenue, the side streets and so on and so forth as those employees are coming to work there. And then also from the CMO, there's 4 also permitted parkings there. So that's how we come up with that, give or take 100 number as a whole that would be returned back to the community. The approach before you tonight provides flexibility and allows us to continue pursuing multiple options to meet the project's parking requirements, reducing existing on-street parking impacts, and to advance this project. So in closing, staff recommends that the City Council approve this resolution directing the city manager to pursue the remote parking variance for the use of the transit center parking lot and to continue the evaluation of off-site leased parking opportunities to meet the parking requirements of the City Hall and Police Department project. And thank you very much, Mayor and Council, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
If I make a motion, I just want a point of clarification real quick. If I make a motion, I can amend the motion after discussion. Okay. Okay, I just want to just be sure. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2026-0077, directing the city manager to pursue a remote parking variance for the use of the transit center parking lot and to evaluate off-site leased parking options to meet the parking requirements for the City Hall and Police Department project.
Second. Councilor Lawyer.
Okay, I have a few questions. So you were talking about the 100 spaces that we're currently going to be giving back to the community. When I was going on and counting the spaces of, so it's PD, City Hall, City Manager's Office, essentially moving in there, right? And I was counting not on street parking because that's what we're complaining about is we're going to have to use street parking. So I'm not counting street parking. Currently, I counted, I mean, I was using Google Earth or whatever, so I could be wrong. I counted like 4 spots in the PD parking lot. Is there more?
We don't have a PD parking lot.
Like in the back, is there parking for PD in the back? There was cars parked. No,
not.
so 0. So there's no police parking behind the PD building right now.
The designated spots for the police department are on 10th Street and on 2nd Avenue.
So all 108 spaces you're not required to have right now, obviously, but all those people currently are parking on the street.
Yes, and so the 108 number, that's the code requirements that came up with that. And
Yeah.
It also doesn't take into consideration 24/7 because not all of our police department personnel.
Yes, yeah.
90-ish FTEs are coming to work at any specific time. They're spread out during the week and during different times of night.
Yes, no, I understand that, but all I'm saying is that currently the PD has a building with all the staff right here, right? 2 blocks from where we're going, and there is 0 on-site parking on that piece of property.
With the exception of Second Avenue and 10th Street, yes. Yes.
0.
On street.
0.
No offset.
So all the 108 or that you're going to put, or 79 on-site spaces, that's all taking off of the street right now. Is that correct? So technically they're all on the street right now, and we're going to take them off the street and we're going to put them in a parking lot. Yes?
With the exception of the 31 that are here at the city hall.
Okay, we got not City Hall. I'm talking to PD right now. Hang
Yeah,
on.
PD, it's,
Hold.
yeah, it's, so any given day, it's probably around that 50 mark.
Right.
Any given shift during
Okay.
peak times.
But I think that is super important to understand for like everyone that's saying like you're going to push them into the neighborhood. They're already in the neighborhood, yes?
Correct.
They're on, and granted, we have parking that is set aside for them right now, but all of that's going to open up potentially.
Correct. Those are the fleet vehicles.
And there's going to, a lot of them are going to park on site. A lot more PD are going to park on site in a parking lot than on the street.
That's the goal.
Okay.
yes.
Well, I mean, there's 79 spots on site. They're going to take some of them, yes?
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe it's
Just making sure.
50 something of the spots. are
60 something.
designated within the secure area. And we're
Okay.
hoping we're going to address that with.
Okay, great. Perfect. So that's, I want to be clear about that. And now we're looking at City Hall, and I counted 29 spaces around City Hall.
31 on the
31.
2 lots.
That's pretty good. Not bad. I did pretty good. And so 31 spaces right now are on City Hall and are going to either be there or at Schluter Floral potentially, or City Hall or Transit Center potentially, correct? Okay. So basically what I'm trying to say is, and then City Manager's office, there is no parking there. You all park on the street.
Correct.
You all park, what?
Yeah, with the city attorney's office.
Yeah, and city attorney. So all of you that are going to go over there, you all park on the street right now, whether that's on 3rd Avenue, well, and walk, or it's on whatever, right? You all park on the street currently, or in the transit center currently or something. Yes. Okay. So that we're not losing, we don't have you don't have a parking lot now, and now all of a sudden you're getting shoved into the neighborhood, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I just want, like, there's some things that are being said that are skewing it away that like isn't accurate. Similar to, you have been talking to the county manager, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you haven't, I know you haven't talked to specifically to like, what are they, commissioners.
No, I haven't.
But that's not your role to talk to commissioners.
Correct.
So a commissioner could have told someone who's their friend, like, I haven't talked to the city, but that's not your job to talk to a commissioner, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but you are in talks with the county manager.
Correct.
Awesome. Okay. My biggest thing as one counselor is I think we should live within our code. Okay. So while I do think that, okay, I'm in a hurry. I do think that this isn't as crazy as it sounds, because we already are parking on the street and people are kind of blowing it out of proportion a little bit. I do think we should stay within our code. I think we need, as one counselor, I think we need to look at increasing the variance. So we fit in the code, potentially taking that to the Board of Adjustments or the CDC and seeing what their opinion is there. And then I also want to say, I think this is a beautiful opportunity for us to increase the the way that the transit center is used, whether that's shared bikes or whatever. And I can talk about that more.
Make a motion.
Affirmation vote? All in favor?
I don't have that much more. I could have done in another 2 minutes, but I think the shared bike, so if we've done variances before. We did them for Animus Brewing Company. They have been done before. It's not like this is the first time we've done a variance for, I don't like it that it's us, if that makes sense. I think we should live within our code. That makes me feel better about what we're doing, not feel better about it, but feel like it's right. I do think that there is a huge missed opportunity at the transit center. And I've brought up the like shared bike or scooter or whatever thing that Vail's doing it. They're having it that last mile, they call it, or whatever, from the bus stop to wherever you're going is huge. I think that if we can get, if you did the 3rd mile, I Google Earthed it, and it like goes up to like 5th Ave and then over to Buckley Park where we're at. And if you got businesses to buy in and say, oh, I want a shared bike from the transit center to my building too. I think it would help increase I think it would be genius. I think it would help increase the usage of the transit center. I think it's everything that we've been wanting to, and I think this is an opportunity for us to look at it. I do think Shooter Floral is way closer and better, and we should definitely pursue that. It's still in conjunction, all these things, but I think that this is a huge opportunity for us to let's make this transit center everything we had hoped for when we built it. And eventually a parking garage can go in there because we're so busy. And does that make sense?
Saying change the code, not necessarily do a variance.
Yeah, change the code. So we fit within the requirements, no variance. Sorry, I
just wanted to clarify. Councilor. I think even though we can skip like the timelines, but I think we'll still go through the yeah, thank you. Councilor Gonzalez.
Well, parking is, I think, one of the most challenging issues we have in any municipality. I know the reason I ever ran for office, it was because I was denied a parking variance. And that's how I ended up serving, because it's a super contentious issue, like in communities all over the country, and trying to solve for that and how we do it. I think we have to be very creative. And I like the idea of using the transit center. It makes sense that we would use that. I guess one question, I think, well, let me just ask the question. How often do we grant variances for parking? Is that half the time it's requested? I mean, I know you don't have an exact number, but like most of the time it's requested, never that it's requested?
I think it depends on the situation. Variances are very unique by their very nature. I've been in the city for 18 months and we've had one variance request, and it was a very unique situation where their parking was within the right of way. So we needed to grant them a parking variance.
So it's been on a case by case basis. You couldn't say it's been like we always grant a variance or we never grant a variance.
No, I mean, it's a case by case evaluation based on the code, because you have to meet the 6 to 7 criteria to have the variance granted.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
There are 6 to 7 criteria required for a variance, and you have to meet them all for the variance to be granted. So each situation has to be looked at through those criteria to see if they meet them.
And do we meet them?
Yes.
We do in this scenario?
Yes.
Okay. That would be good to know. I don't have them off the top. I mean, I suspect you don't have them off the top of your head either, and maybe it doesn't matter for this discussion, but I do think it's important that we meet the criteria for a variance. That's true?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I think it helps me make the decision because it is a challenging one. So thank you, Jamie. I guess the other question I have for Bob or Aaron, rideshare is very expensive. I mean, what type of a rideshare, or rather bike share program are you talking about? Or is it just for discussion purposes?
Yeah, I think the idea is that we had, what we've been discussing so far is we would buy an inventory of bikes ourselves that would be city owned, that we would then have available at the transit center and then the city hall and police department location where folks could ride them back and forth, with covered storage where those would stay in between the.
And they have to, like the permanent ride share, random e-bikes.
It's a
bike share.
Who drive it and leave it on a sidewalk. There would be a storage place at the transit center where employees could pull a bike. They would go to City Hall PD. They would put it in that storage center there, and then they would bring it back. But it wouldn't be like just left where it is. They would be specifically for employees to shuttle back and forth.
But the kind where you have a racks, because those are very expensive. That's why I'm asking. Like very expensive, not something that we could. I mean, I can't remember the cost, but it's surprisingly expensive.
Our initial thoughts were reasonable e-bikes that have panniers that get folks back and forth between the quarter mile.
Okay, so I think it's important to know that as we continue this discussion, because in my experience, those like city rideshare programs, and you see them all over the country, it's not something new, but you especially had them in just exactly the scenario that we're discussing, where people were commuting over a bridge or commuting over a bridge, for example. But like those dock stations are way more expensive than you think. And the bikes themselves are way more expensive. They're like 10 grand. They're not a regular e-bike that you can buy at Pedal the Peaks, for example. They're a whole system, and it's very expensive to maintain. So I think that, I don't know, perhaps if we decide to table this, should we decide to, whatever options, if you're going to use that option, you really need to give us a cost of it, because it's not something that you can just install. And the maintenance is super expensive, and it's a whole thing. So I guess that was one question. And then even the cost for transit. I mean, isn't that also quite an expensive proposal to have a driver going back and forth? Or
Already do.
But from the transit center
To
to
Buckley Park.
Buckley
Down
Park,
Main, yeah, there's already.
just one stop every 30 minutes?
We have a current trolley that does that service already.
Every 20 minutes.
Every 20 minutes? Okay. And I imagine that would be free? Or, I mean, so the employees would just jump on the bus like everybody else?
All of
No
our
special
employees-
transit?
All of our employees ride the trolley for free already.
Okay. Okay. So, so that would be just part of the system that already exists. Well, that's something positive to hear. And so, I guess, as I mentioned, just parking is such a stress on communities and so expensive to maintain. But we know that people are already parking on the streets, and that's not going to stop. I don't imagine, regardless of whether or not we make these adjustments, there are going to continue to be lots of people parking on the street. It's probably, I suspect that people won't see any impact change in their regular routine if we do the variation for the variance for the transit center. So I think I'm grateful to hear that we meet all the requirements for the variance. I know that parking variances, I would think, would be more common than any other variance because of being a historic community where people at one time, not everybody was driving everywhere with 2 cars and always making trips. So we have to be accommodating when we're trying to especially restore historic buildings. But I know that so many of the people that I talked to really supported this project because of the underground parking. Like, people really wanted that. And so to see that I understand that it got taken off, that it wasn't in the ballot language, that there was always going to be flexibility around this issue, but that parking was, in talking to people about it, like, they were really looking forward to that, having that underground parking that didn't come for all the reasons that, it doesn't come. But that's all the questions I have for the moment. Thank you.
Councilor Grosso.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Councilor Gonzalez that the underground parking, that elimination, it's really changed the dynamic on this. I think we've got the first of a cascade of problems or extra costs that are going to be associated with the remodeling of what we had proposed. I've got a couple of questions for you. One of the statements was that the number had moved from 85 presented in May down to 60. Was that true, accurate, and from the numbers, and was that due to bike exemptions? I think that was a piece of it.
The number has moved a couple of times, more so because staff has looked more and more into the code. The first numbers that they gave were based on straight up square footage of the building. They didn't look at the Midtown exemption that was put in recently that the city hall could take advantage of. So that dropped the number. And then we inadvertently left the square footage of the community development building in there as well. So when you take that away, that again reduces the number of required spaces. And then the bike sharing came into play that we included indoor bike storage in City Hall. So all of those were minor reductions that were made that impacted the total number of required spaces.
Fair to say that in reality, we'll need all of those people to ride the bikes that we expect to ride the bikes for that to actually apply in reality. we've granted some exemptions because of the location of this, but we still may have people in cars that we've got to still deal with in the reality of the situation of when we actually build this. I know we're making accommodations because we've passed some accommodations, but that doesn't eliminate people. It just hopefully encourages people, encourages a project to move forward. Is that a fair statement?
The reductions are put in place, especially for the places in downtown that had the opportunity to take advantage of on-street parking for other businesses and things of that nature. And that's why we offer that, because there are businesses who don't quite function up to the exact T of a general office. And so we want to make sure that we're offering flexibility for them, because not every business is going to function the same.
And those Midtown exemptions weren't for a like business taking over for a like business? Was that something unrelated?
The exemption that's for downtown and midtown allows for a business that is allowed by right. So if it's a limited use, special use, or conditional use, like the PD is a conditional use, so it can't take advantage of that.
Okay.
But if it's a by right use, you do not have to provide additional parking if you're changing over the use of a building from one use, allowed use, to another allowed use.
Okay. Very clear. Thank you very much on that. The police parking has a turnover piece to it. This is something that's always fascinated me, is it's one spot that's taken up, but the normal spots are turning over every hour, 2 hours or so. Was there any taking into account the fact that just that turnover alone is going to free up more parking too, once the police cars move off the street?
Yeah, we know that operationally.
Yeah.
That, I mean, like when I worked in Denver, we had a very small parking lot up there, and you'd pull your police vehicle out, you put your personal car in there, and then you went into service. So it was kind of a 1-for-1, even though there's 2 vehicles associated to that one spot.
Okay.
And so we anticipate that's going to happen quite frequently here as well.
Because we would get an 8 or 10 car turnover in a spot that used to have just one police car.
Absolutely.
Too. I just wanted to make sure, in fairness, that we bring that up. I do want to point out that the variance is 430 feet. That's a football field and a half. It is not a small variance. We're going way outside of what sounds to me like a small variance when we're talking about it in general. So that's a lot of walking distance. I have strong doubts about employee parking in transit lots during bad weather. The bike share program's great. A nice walk during a spring Durango day is fantastic as well. But a cold day, an icy day in January, a hot day, returning from work back there when it's 92 or 94 degrees is going to be pretty arduous at times. And I think that's going to burn out. Have we talked at all about whether senior management and those folks who come and go would have priority in the lots that are close to the building? And so we're in some ways ghettoizing the employees who sit for 8 hours in the same spaces. They'd be the ones to have to park down at the transit center and deal with the commute, while senior management and or folks who are coming and going get the spots that are close in.
We haven't had those types of conversations yet on it. I think that there's a lot of different things to look into, because we also have several people in our workforce that are actually remote. So they actually only come in like on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they're not here Tuesday, Thursday. So some of the discussions would be those that aren't using it would probably be the ones more likely to go to the transit center. On the icy cold parts of that, we have a lot of workforce. When it does that, they don't come into work. That actually frees up more parking for us, because that's usually when people say, I'm going to work from home because I'm out in Mancos or I'm out in Cortez, and the drive there is too difficult for that. So the winter thing's not really that much of a concern on that part, because, or as it is, they're out skiing. There's the other part of it. So it's a powder day, so they're on their way. So snow days really aren't too much of a concern, but we haven't gotten into the details of how we were going to assign parking spots, where we're not going to. There's a lot that still goes on. If we get the 20 parking spots at that parking lot, plus maybe we get 10 from the county, now we're only talking 30 over at the transit center. So that changes everything completely. So it would be way too early for us to start talking how that's going to be disseminated without knowing what it's going to look like day one when City Hall and PD open up.
Yeah, it gets tough at times because we're talking about stuff that keeps needing to be figured out later on down the line, but we're making decisions that force us in a certain direction. And so I don't know what to do about that. I understand that there's some difficulty in being able to say, here's the whole plan all at once on these things, but I keep feeling like we've got dominoes that just keep forcing us to walk down one direction, and we don't have an understanding of what those impacts are going to be. So I don't know what the solution is there, but I just wanted to acknowledge that there's some frustration there. The leased spaces. So the transit center, I just don't think in reality people are going to want to commute from that far. So I go back to leased spaces that are around. You're talking to at least one significant source of leased spaces. Are there other sources that together could add up to the 60 within a much closer distance to where we're at?
Yeah, so the current lease that we're looking at is 21 spaces. And then from there, if we can work with the county, we're not sure exactly what it's going to look like right now. Part of that opportunity that we're working with the county manager on is the Old Main Post Office. I know it's up for sale right now. However, during the proximity of that time when whenever it sells, that lot is potentially available to us as well. And that's about 25 spots. And then at the old Schluter Floral spot, we're working on that to figure out what can be capitalized on there. Right now, it's an underutilized space. So we're looking 10 to potentially 30 between those combinations right there. And if we do have the money in the future and that partnership does go through with the county, then who knows how many spaces we're going to be able to look at, if it's going to be a dual structure, how it's going to work with the alley space and everything else. But between those two and the potential lease to buy in the future, if we are able to capitalize on that, we could solve our entire problem within the next couple of years.
The old PD, old City Hall lots, if we just graveled those, do we get X one of those? Do we get X number of spots for the short term and leave it completely able to be sold and built on?
Potentially, but that's not the direction we're pursuing.
It was taken
based off of
right
direction from the council.
Yeah, I think there's an element here that it might be worth exploring if we want to go in that direction. So I'll end with this round on the leased spaces. Could we get to 60 leased spaces by leasing 20 here, 10 here, 5 here within a normal distance from City Hall PD?
We attempted that. In between us and our project managers who are online, I think we had a list of approximately 15 properties within the quarter-mile radius that we identified as parking lots. And if they have capacity and or interest in sharing space, leasing space, or even purchasing space.
So you looked at that and you could not find anything more than the
Correct.
20. And you looked at 15 different spaces.
Yeah, there's the 15 possibilities.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Yelsey.
Thank you, Mayor. Alrighty, I'd like to propose something that might take a couple votes. I would like to divide this question and let's vote on evaluate offsite leasing, parking options, la-di-da-di-da. And then evaluate this first part, the remote parking variance. Maybe there's other solutions that we could do that if we just divided that question and okayed the off-seat license, off-seat leasing parking options for the city manager to investigate. That might simplify this resolution here. But to do that, we would have to vote down the motion.
Can I maybe amend my motion and see if
we can amend that, but you see what I'm saying? Let's vote on this bottom part and then amend the top part.
see if you second this amendment to my motion.
Okay, let's.
Then
Okay.
maybe. So I'd like to amend my motion to say, I move to approve resolution 2026-0077, directing the city manager to pursue a remote parking variance for the use of the transit center parking lot and to evaluate off-site leased parking options to meet the evaluate off-site leased parking options and include pursuing a change to our code to make this project and the 1,750 feet part of our code for everyone.
Second.
Does that make sense?
Just to
Does that make
change the
sense?
code.
Like,
Yeah.
to pursue looking at changing the code, go to, you have to obviously go through all the proper protocols.
Second.
You're approving this.
I'm approving this and moving forward with it while also looking to change our code. Yes,
But the variance is coming first.
not
No,
first.
No.
No. I was gonna, not first, but like in conjunction. My, when I get nervous is that I don't want the construction. Did you second? I can't keep talking.
Yes, there's a second.
Okay, sorry. I just didn't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want the project to be like delayed or held up with the bond stuff because we're working towards something that might take longer. Does that make sense? And if it is one person, if the LUDC or whoever says Board of Adjustment says no, that we're not gonna do it for X, Y, and Z reasons, which they know better than I know, then I still want to move forward with the variance, thinking.
So moving in parallel with both.
Parallel with
In the possibility that one of these could die,
Yes.
right?
The default is the variance for the city is going to go through.
No.
No.
It just goes to the CDC, just like the request does. Everything is just saying like, yes, go through. They see our meeting minutes, they see the direction we want to go potentially, and then they give us reasons why yes or no. Boy Scouts didn't like my.
Okay, I second it.
Okay.
Is there
Discussion.
debate still on this?
Yeah, we can still.
Yeah, I mean, I still haven't
I just
spoken yet.
amended, and Gilda and her haven't, or Gilda and her.
Sorry, Dave and
So Gilda and Dave still need to go.
Yeah. So we haven't really talked much about, I think there's a lot of folks that might be concerned with the accountability aspect of employees not being beholden or holding themselves accountable to parking where they should be. And so I guess I just want to reaffirm that we are going to find some sort of strategy or really robust policy that will ensure that there will be some accountability measures for employees to ensure that they're acting in the spirit of what we're all kind of pulling up here on the dais for, right?
Yes.
Great. Love hearing that. And then I guess I want to bring up again, I mean, we're going from 31 current off-street parking spaces to 79 off-street parking spaces. Correct?
Yes.
We're more than doubling our current capacity. And then you've got roughly maybe 20 at the Schluter Floral parking lot.
It depends on what it is, but we're looking at how do we reconfigure that lot so that
Sure.
we can work with
So
the county on it.
15, 20,
Probably be 10 right now would be the low end of the, I would bank on.
and then maybe the post office,
Which is 20 plus,
and then maybe this third-party private.
21 more.
So, I mean, there's potential that we could be single digits or low double digits for need, if any need at all. If all the dominoes lay perfectly for us, then, but we're pursuing all of these options. We're talking with the county. Thank you again for speaking with the county manager. We're talking with the third party a lot, and then it would be more conversations with the county regarding the post office, right?
Yes.
So we're nailing two birds with one stone there. So I think that's something that is important to narrate, is that, we're more than doubling what we currently have that's existing. And we're going to open up a lot of this on-street parking within these two facilities that people use, as well as the current city manager and city attorney's office.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to put that out there. Councilor Lawyer.
Okay, I just wanted to close. I don't have any more questions. I've asked a lot. Maybe it'll come up. I just want to close by zooming out a little bit, because I think we've gotten very focused on the parking calculation, and we're missing an opportunity to think bigger about what we're actually trying to accomplish. Today, these same city employees are working with approximately 31 dedicated on-site parking spaces. With this project, we're going to more than double that number on-site spaces, as well as we are freeing up all of the parking that the PD is taking up on these side streets. And city manager, city attorney's offices are taking up. I parked next to you when I went in for a meeting the other day, actually. And so at the same time, we are a community that has spent years saying we want to be more walkable, more bike friendly, more transit oriented, and smarter about how we use existing infrastructure. Even Charles Shaw, when he participated in the focus group for this project, challenged us on whether we should be building parking at all. So maybe this is our opportunity to actually demonstrate what we've been talking about. I don't want city employees parking in the surrounding neighborhoods. In fact, I want us to prove to these neighbors that this project can actually free up on-street parking, because police department and city manager's office employees who currently use the streets now will have dedicated parking and transportation alternatives. I absolutely want staff to continue prioritizing the closer parking opportunities you are already pursuing with the county and private property owners. Those should be our first choice. I also think we should make the transit center work better, not just for City Hall, but for downtown businesses, employees, and the entire community. Let's demonstrate a bike share program that actually works. A small system with roughly 10 e-bikes and 2 docking locations could cost us around $25,000 in initial investment. Compare that with the cost of constructing structured parking. If that works here, maybe it becomes something bigger. Additional docking locations, partnerships with downtown businesses, and a real last mile transportation system connecting remote parking with downtown. Finally, I keep coming back to the variance. I think the city should live within the same code we require everyone else to follow. If 1,750 feet is reasonable, safe, and functional while our code stops at 1,320 feet, then perhaps we shouldn't give ourselves an exception. Perhaps we should examine whether the code needs to change. And if we change it, let's change it for everyone. Let's allow other businesses and property owners to utilize the transit center under appropriate conditions and show them how this can work. I don't want us to simply solve 60 parking spaces on a spreadsheet. I want us to protect the neighborhood, use parking we already own, prioritize closer spaces, follow our own rules, and use this project as an opportunity to demonstrate what more walkable, bikeable, and transit-friendly Durango can actually look like.
Councilor Crosso.
I think council has, in an incredible switch, started assuming all the best of the situation is going to happen and not the inevitable negatives that are going to result from some of this stuff. So the exemption only works and is applicable because we've got the support mechanisms that other businesses do not have. We can run trolleys, we can give free passes to the employees, we can make adaptations that the other businesses that never had a chance at getting an exemption were had available to them. And so I don't have any problem with the vision that you're putting out there, but I would like to see it implemented in stages before we start just saying it's going to work. Because it just hasn't worked in the past. We're giving the city an exemption after not denying that same exemption to other businesses. We just can't be this hypocritical, in my opinion. So what will enforcement be? You say we're going to have an enforcement program, but I don't see what the actual enforcement program is at this point. How are we going to guarantee that there's equity in the parking spots? There's just a host of questions that aren't getting answered, and we're just bulling forward with this to the detriment of the older neighborhoods if it doesn't work out. So, and I don't see how we've taken into account growth. We're moving the same number of employees from the current City Hall and PD into a situation, and a parking situation that applies to now, and yet we're talking about the growth that is going to happen over the course of the next 40 years needs to be maintained by these buildings. I think the buildings are going to maintain the growth. I'm not sure that the parking situation is as well. And so I think the adapted resolution is too complex. I think we need to break this into smaller bite-sized pieces and do better with this than just pursuing all of this with an assumption that it's all going to work out great. Thank you.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Thank you. So I feel the same way. I was prepared to support the motion sort of the way it was, and now we have this additional thing that you know, I'm reluctant to support. And I guess Jamie, if you could answer. So you know, we're talking about changing this parking variance for our benefit, but I mean, can an existing business go and reapply since we changed the rules? Like, what about, I just don't know. You mentioned that it's not that common that businesses have come and requested a variance. But is there going to be some point where perhaps, you know, businesses that were denied would now be eligible, or I guess they just have to apply all over again?
Any business would have the advantage of a new code, but if they're already compliant, then they wouldn't need it. I would say more often than not, variance requests are based on the number of spaces versus the remote parking. I talked to my staff and no one recalls someone asking for a variance of remote parking distance specifically. Most has been numbers or a design of a tandem space, things of that nature for a variance request.
So, doing a code revision, you know, as being proposed, we can do a one-off code revision. You don't have to do, it's not like every 2 years we revise our code. So we can do a one-off code revision. We can decide we want to update this.
Yes.
Is that a common exercise?
It can happen if there's something that is either time sensitive, required by state mandate. Those are things that we will try to do very quickly and get them as a one-off versus trying to do a large set of amendments.
Okay, because I think that's also right, like important. Like, how often do we do code? Are we going to suddenly redo our code when it's not a common practice? And I mean, I guess I just, these, thank you very much, Jamie. That's all that I have questions I have. Just that, you know, these, I mean, I would support a parking variance for almost anything because the reality is we're never going to get enough parking for all of the cars. The more you build, the more people park. It's just, I've had a couple of experiences over my career where it almost didn't matter how many parking spaces you had, they would immediately be filled. And now you're going to continue to have a problem with parking. So, and it just doesn't, people are going to park what's the most convenient places. I think we all know people are going to park in the most convenient area, unless perhaps there's a very strict enforcement for why they shouldn't, like getting towed or something like that, that we know is, I'm also reluctant to support something when we don't know what the consequence will be, because those enforcements can be very heavy-handed. They can be heavy-handed or not. I don't know what that looks like, and that gives me pause. I don't like changing motions when they've already been presented and making amendments on the dais. That makes me very uncomfortable because I feel like I just haven't had time to review the information that's being presented. So I'll likely not support the motion on the floor. Thank you, Mayor.
I can add, I don't know if it's particularly helpful at this point, but the suggestion to change the code, it's the LUDC code, which is arbitrary. The LUDC is intended to apply to communities all over the country. It's a model. The fact that there's a quarter-mile distance in there is not specific to Durango. So that type of tweak to the LUDC, that type of one-off amendment can sometimes be very, very appropriate. So I don't know if that helps, but we understand that the motion is that it's what's up there now but in addition to that, they're going to change the code, which I've told you is somewhat arbitrary, to match what you're requesting today.
And so the motion is that what's here. So it's the same exact thing we're doing.
Yeah.
Plus it is researching if we should do this, going through like getting their advice as to if we should change it or just go after the variance.
And that's what I was trying to help with.
Yeah.
That part of researching that is realizing that quarter mile is arbitrary in the sense that it's just a standard that the LUDC puts out there. It's not specific to Durango. It was not designed specifically for Durango. So that type of change is something that can happen.
Councilor Coso. Jamie, I'm having a little bit of a hard time. So what business is going to be able to come to the CDC and say, I want to look at parking within a quarter mile of my radius and count that towards my parking requirements?
It's part of any major site plan or any site plan in general, that if somebody's coming in, or even a new business, if they're moving into downtown and say it's a limited use permit and now they need 5 parking spaces and there's none on site. That's their option, is to go look for remote parking within that quarter mile to then have to do the remote parking plan and show us how that will work. But it'll be part of their approval process through the land use and permitting.
So any business, restaurant, anything that opens up right beside City Hall and PD, let's pretend that there's a space there, they can access the transit center as legitimate parking for their operations.
Yes, but there's a limitation to that. You can't just keep dipping into the same pool. If we take 60 of those spaces and the transit center needs some of those spaces, you can only use what's left over in the pool. You can't keep using the same spaces over and over for different businesses.
So the city would be ruining 60 spaces or whatever is at the transit center that we're taking for businesses to take advantage of. At some point, we would calculate that there's 100 spaces. The city's got 60 of them. There's 40 left. First come, first serve. I'm simplifying that grossly, and I understand that, but my point is,
I think, though, they have to have a written agreement, long lease term to use it. They just can't use public parking as filling their parking requirement. So if there was the transit center, they would have to come to the city and say, we would like to enter into a 20-year lease for these 5-year, I don't know what the number of years, for these 5 parking spots and signed into it. They just can't go attach public parking and say, these are all my parking. They have to have an agreement that gives it to them.
Yes, he's
okay. So there would be an extreme limitation it seems to me, on any business accessing something the way that the city is doing it. The city had a transit center that it gave itself permission to use. The city has the infrastructure to transport from that transit center. Anybody else trying to access this variance and use this variance would have an almost impossible time finding those spaces, it seems to me. Or the infrastructure to get people a quarter of a mile. You know, I'm walking 6 blocks to Carver's. That means my parking space is over on 5th Street.
Yes, we have very few remote parking agreements.
It just seems to me, council, that this isn't applicable to any businesses. Giving a code variance is just, it's whitewashing it.
Well, but again, it's not specific to the transit center. So, and it's come across my desk where people have tried to satisfy their parking requirements by leasing something within a certain space of their business. And that's, the variance would apply. It just increases that distance from a quarter mile to the 1,750 feet or whatever is proposed. So it's not just specific to the transit center. Any business that needs the parking that could lease it or buy it or whatever is part of their business within that distance, it would apply equally to everybody. Yes, the city has an advantage because we already own the transit center, but a private business could lease property within that distance and satisfy the requirement.
Any idea with currently with a quarter mile radius, how many businesses have actually leased something that's on the outer edge of a quarter mile?
I don't have that data, sir.
Am I remembering correctly, Jamie? I seem to remember like sometime either during the pandemic or after the pandemic that downtown businesses on Main are not required to provide any parking for a new business. Is that correct?
They have the same exemption that Midtown does if it's a by right use.
So
If
no
it's a
parking
limited,
is
special,
necessary.
or conditional use, then they are required to provide whatever parking would be needed.
Okay. Thank you. And I guess I would just push back a little bit on that. We are leveraging our own services that we have for our employees. To me, we have a free parking program for downtown employees from the transit department. We have free trolley services for the community within some of those same summer hours. Transit's available for everybody, not just for city employees. And then didn't we have discounted transit center passes for downtown businesses at one point, or do we still offer that? So we offer, to me, like benefits that it's not just for city employees and we're asking for this major exemption. I feel like we've done a lot within the downtown community, business community, to make things work from a parking standpoint. So yeah, I feel like there's it's not just so one-sided as some people are making it. I guess that's just my opinion.
Can we just have a clarification on that?
Could you
just clarify one of the points you just made? That's it. No?
Clarifying what point?
The point that you said that there was free parking for employees downtown.
Yeah, on the south end of downtown on narrow gauge. Yeah, that was like 2 summers.
Actually $20 a month.
Yeah,
And
I
it's
thought there was a
subsidized.
cost associated with those.
But there was.
Subsidized with our lodger's tax. That's current. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. But what
We
was
did
that?
have- we had free parking on the west side of Narrowgate.
Okay, so we did have free parking at one point, and that no longer,
Correct. It wasn't highly utilized.
it wasn't highly utilized, but we did offer it for free.
So we have expanded our parking options to different places throughout downtown, $20 a month.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, any other discussion? All right, can I get a roll call?
The motion passes. 4 in favor, Dave Woodruff, Jessica Lawyer, Gilda Yazzie, Shirley Gonzalez. 1 opposed, Kip Koso.
Thank you. And the next agenda item is 11.2, which is a resolution expanding the interview teams for the Community Development Commission and the Financial Advisory Board to include any counselor who chooses to be included.
Sorry, I don't in front of me.
I'll make a motion unless you want to do it.
Make a motion to, oh yeah, sorry. Make a new motion to approve expanding the interview teams for the Community Development Commission and the Financial Advisory Board to include any counselor who chooses to be included.
Second.
Any discussion?
Council, the main reasoning behind this still stands. The FAB, which has a 3-year term and a very wide breadth of involvement for city decision-making and providing guidance around financial issues, deserves extra attention. The CDC acts as a quasi-judicial body. Council members might want to be involved more since appointments have direct decision-making authority. So,
Councilor Lawyer. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Yazzie.
Okay, so my concern is if 3 counselors show up to an interview team, would this necessarily make it a public meeting then? And so then we would have to publicize private people's resumes.
That's what we used to do. So as a little background,
Okay,
we
let's hear
used to, yeah, so we used to have all council was on every single board and commission interview committee. And we would like announce it just like we do for open meetings. It was a public meeting. We interviewed in the public. And then there was a few instances when I first got on council where only one person would show up, or like scheduling became more and more challenging. And then we'd have to like keep moving the meetings and pushing out the appointments. And so then that's when it was decided like, okay, let's just go down to 2 counselors, because then we don't have to like do an open meeting. You and I can just determine like what makes sense, and let's go interview these people when we have time. Does that make sense? Like, so that's why the change happened. I'll talk more about my.
Yeah, you know, people need to be made aware of then that their resumes are going to be on the internet.
Councilor.
Yeah, I wanted to and confirm, Ben, if more than 3 counselors are in an interview committee, it will be a public meeting from here on forward.
Under the OML, yes, absolutely. You're doing
It's a
public
quorum, yeah.
business and there's more than a quorum.
And we used to do this. Were you here? Yes, maybe.
I believe a
Yes.
bigger group did.
Just
Yeah.
want to make sure I remember.
It triggers all of the OML requirements, so you have to keep minutes.
Yeah.
I'm not discouraging, I'm just telling you what the
Yeah.
law is. So when there's more than 2 of you conducting business, and that's obviously official business, selecting a advisory board members, that falls under the OML.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it's a fine idea. I don't mind going back to that. Literally, the only reason why we went away from it was scheduling and people not showing up and having to reschedule meetings, and it just became kind of a nightmare. But I think these are important boards and commissions. I think whoever wants to have, is available and can be a part of them, I think absolutely should. I do think it is important to let the applicants know that it will be an open meeting again, but I don't think that would, I don't know. I think I think we'll see if it deters applicants. We can, I guess, discuss it later. But for now, I'd say let's give it a go.
So for public meetings, we have to take minutes. So it would be the responsibility of someone present at the meeting to take minutes.
What's interesting to me is the way you got it set up. If only 2 people show up, it goes from being a public meeting on OML to not being one. So you're gonna have some flexibility with it. But I mean, legally, if this passes these 2 boards, you'd want to advertise those as open as meetings where the public can attend. If only 2 show up, there's no quorum requirement to do that business, so you can still go forward. It's just a little bit of a gray area because you don't know who's going to show up.
So somebody at the meeting would take notes and then hand them off to the clerk's office for recording?
If there's a quorum, it would have to be recorded and live streamed. Depending on the interviews, there could be sequential interviews that are streamed and listened to. But with the quorum, and I think council could decide, we don't generate minutes for study sessions. There's no official decisions, but if there is official decisions with these interviews, then it's looking more like a public meeting with minutes and recording and streaming.
Okay, and that was my next question, is like the clerk's office would be represented at these meetings then. Is that correct?
Most likely.
Okay. All right, thank you, Ben. Councilor Yazzie, did you have anything else? Councilor Costo.
Yeah, I just go back. These are very important committees. A little extra attention, a little extra time is valuable, I think, at this point. And you've got the usual two that are going to be assigned. This is just a voluntary if another council member wants to get on. So it's not going to be an automatic, 3, 4, or 5 folks unless they're interested. So I think it's plenty of room for us to adapt and give the opportunity for all council to be involved in 2 very important committees.
Okay, Councilor Yazzie.
Okay, so I still maintain that all committees are of equal importance and everybody who participates on a meeting has the same status as other committee members. So I don't recognize the fact that the FAB and the CDC are higher committees. I still maintain that they're all equal and they all put out excellent work.
Any other discussion? All right, can I get a roll call, please?
The motion passes. All in favor: Jessica Lawyer, Kip Koso, Dave Woodruff, Gilda Yazzie, Shirley Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. And the next item is 11.3, a resolution approving fair share alternative compliance for the Homestead Townhomes.
The applicant has arrived, so our timing is perfect.
You.
The applicant has been here for some time. I'm merely making a joke. Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council, and good evening, members of the public. I'm Brian Devine. I'm the city's Housing Policy and Planning Administrator, here to present a request for fair share alternative compliance, council approval thereof, for the Homestead Townhomes project. This item falls under our Innovative Housing and Economic Development Strategic Plan goal. I'm going to start with a reminder. Council has seen this project recently. The project is located at 1720 Florida Road and is highlighted in blue on this context map. The pink background here is the city limits of Durango. As a reminder, it was just a couple of weeks ago on July 21st that City Council adopted Resolution 2026-0065, approving a preliminary plan for the Homestead subdivision to create the layout that you see on your screens, with 17 townhome units in a mix of 3-unit and 5-unit buildings. This was subject to fair share housing requirements. And the proposal that was submitted along with the preliminary plan was for a standard fair share agreement under the Intermediate Ownership Affordability Standard. This is the one that we're all very familiar with on council now, the 150% AMI owner occupied for at least 7 years standard. And as a reminder, standard fair share agreements do not require council approval. They are approvable by staff. So we always inform council of the fair share situation for a project, even if council does not need to affirmatively vote to approve a standard fair share agreement, as was the case here. While that preliminary plan was proposed, staff also informed council that the developer was negotiating with Durango School District for the inclusion of employee housing on the site. The district has now submitted a fair share proposal to cover their part of the project, with the remainder of the homes in the development falling under the standard fair share agreement that was previously submitted. So this is the proposal as it exists today. The school district has proposed purchasing 6 to 9 of the 17 homes in the development. They have proposed tying rents for their employees based on a combination of employee compensation and unit size. There are a mix of 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom units in the project. Those rents would be targeted to approximately 25 to 30% of the income associated with the employee classification, and would be in effect for a 30-year period. That is the same period of time that would be in effect for a standard rental fair share agreement. Fair share does not consider employee housing as a separate category. So we're going to be showing you the comparison here of a standard rental fair share agreement in the sense of like an apartment building where a percentage of those units are dedicated as fair share homes. As I mentioned, the remaining homes that are not purchased by the school district here would continue to be sold by the developer to individual owner occupants at prices affordable to households earning 150% of the area median income. Fair Share does not envision having two proposals on one site, so technically we will be asking for your approval of this whole package. But just to note that only one of these is outside the terms of what would be a standard Fair Share agreement. There are review criteria in the Land Use and Development Code that a proposal must meet for Fair Share alternative compliance, which is the term for anything that's not a standard Fair Share agreement. That criterion appears on your screens. Simply, you must find that the proposal provides equal or greater affordable housing benefits to the city over an equal or longer period of time than on-site construction of required Fair Share homes. On-site construction here is a standard Fair Share agreement. So there's a full discussion of this in your packets, but staff has reviewed the proposal and our analysis is that this criterion is met. Again, in the comparison scenario, a standard rental Fair Share agreement, either 10 or 12% of the homes in the development would have rents tied to income. In this proposal, 100% of the rental homes will have their rents tied to income with none of them set by the open market. There is a 30-year compliance period for both the proposal and the comparison scenario. So again, we believe obviously the equal or longer period of time part of the criterion is met, and we do believe that this provides either equal or greater benefit because you're going from 10% of the homes to 100% of the homes having rents tied to income. The trade-off here is that those incomes can be at different tiers. They might not be at the exact same AMIs that a standard Fair Share agreement targets. Nonetheless, it's staff's analysis that this is, to get 100% of the homes in the development guaranteed to be rented affordably for the households that occupy them is a significant benefit and either an equal or greater benefit to a standard rental Fair Share agreement. As a result, we will be recommending that you make such a finding and that you approve the proposal. We do believe that in facilitating the partnership between the developer and the school district in this way goes a long way toward advancing our vision of our community, especially the multi-generational and thriving aspects, not only to support some non-market housing here, but specifically to help with recruitment and retention efforts for Durango School District and their part in a thriving and multi-generational Durango. We have a resolution for you in your packet. We would ask for you to move to approve Resolution 0079 with a finding that the Fair Share proposal meets the appropriate review criteria with the full recommendation on your screen. The applicant is here. If you have specific questions for them, they do not have a presentation for you, but we can, between the two of us, answer questions that you may have.
Move to approve Resolution R-2026-0079, approving Fair Share alternative compliance for the Homestead Townhomes with a finding that the Durango School District's Fair Share proposal meets the review criteria found in the Land Use and Development Code.
Second.
Discussion? Councilor Coso.
Just a couple of small questions, Brian. The component where the district wouldn't sell, but could potentially sell was a little bit of a rocky road for me. So the key question really is if there was a sale before 7 years, does the housing default back into our Fair Share program? What happens in that instance, I guess?
Yeah, we spent some time with the district on this because and I don't want to represent the district's position on their own bond language here.
Got it.
But the position is that because they were the bond language has to take precedence over an affordable housing goal under the city's program. So I think the idea is the district has no intention of selling those units before the compliance period is up. They've put in their proposal some criteria they would have to meet before they engage in a sale. But their position is that they cannot allow the affordable housing goal to trump their obligations to their bondholders. So we spent some time thinking about whether that's appropriate in the interest of facilitating the partnership and the idea that we're not just getting 10 or 12% of the rental homes in the project into this situation where affordability comes first or tying it to compensation comes first. We're actually getting all of the rentals. It still represents, that 100% of the homes in the project are meeting a city affordable housing goal. And even if the worst case scenario were to happen and some number of those units had to be sold, it's still a significant benefit to the city for the time that they're in the program.
Thanks for that. And then again, the 7-year timeline just always seems so short to me that it just goes back to market price and is able to sell at that point. Is there any mechanisms to extend that 7 years?
So I want to be clear here. The 7-year period applies to the owner occupied homes and not the district.
Correct. Sorry. Yes.
Technically, as I said, you are being asked to approve this whole package because our code does not envision having 2 separate proposals for components of the project. The intermediate ownership standard is already in our code, and that 7-year price and occupancy restriction is actually not in the code. It's in our procedures, our implementing procedures. As we've discussed before, that comes out of a recognition that two recognitions. One, this is a really new requirement, the intermediate ownership standard. There aren't a lot of points of comparison around Colorado or indeed around the country for this kind of ownership standard where we're really focused on owner occupancy. The second is, so we think a 7-year period is appropriate because it's a new requirement and we don't know how the market is going to respond. This is the first intermediate ownership proposal the city has ever received. The second reason is that under intermediate ownership, there is no city subsidy. So in other kinds of fair share agreements, the city is actually contributing dollars out of the Housing Innovation Fund in exchange for a price reduction. That contribution is really how we justify, you can't just turn around and sell that tomorrow at a market price because we've actually contributed. Under intermediate ownership, there is no city subsidy. There's no density bonus, there's no parking reduction, and there's no fee offsets or other contribution out of the Housing Innovation Fund. So the idea there is a longer restriction like 30 years in a standard rental fair share agreement is probably not appropriate because the city hasn't actually contributed to any kind of price reduction. These are just what they cost to develop.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Any other questions? All right, can I get a roll call, please?
The motion passes. All in favor: Jessica Lawyer, Kip Koso, Dave Woodruff, Gilda Yazzie, Shirley Gonzalez.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to consideration ordinances. There's none. And then we'll move on to public comment on city managers not under consideration tonight.
And thank you, Mayor. No one has signed up for public comment for non-agenda items tonight.
No one has. Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on to 14, other new business. And before we jump into here, I just want to do a quick reminder for everybody. We're here to only vote in favor or against this new business item and not advocate on either side of the issue. We're not going to be going into pros and cons of supporting it or not supporting it, just to move it forward or not move it forward. Just want to be clear on that. Great. Go ahead, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Item 14.1 is a resolution waiving the attorney-client privilege relative to the independent investigation of Councilor Koso submitted by Councilor Yazzie.
Just want us to vote?
Well, I mean, we sure.
You need a motion in a second to get it on the floor.
Okay, I make the motion to a resolution waiving the attorney-client privilege relative relative to the independent investigation of Constance Coso.
Second. All right, Counselor Lawyer.
Okay, so my question is that, with this resolution waiving attorney-client privilege, what is it asking to waive? Is the privilege attached to the investigative report itself, the legal advice surrounding it, or both?
Just the report itself.
Okay, because that was.
Understand, I was conflicted out of the situation. That's why an independent counsel was brought in. That was sent to me.
I
have got to object to the fact that this is a lot of discussion that happened in an executive session and is certainly sharing some of that discussion that went on in the executive session.
Are we sharing anything under, we're not sharing anything under
I'm
executive
just
session?
explaining that you asked me if it was report or legal advice. There's been no legal advice. There's just been the report.
We didn't have a good executive session around.
No.
Apologies. Sorry about that.
Okay, I know, I just want to make sure. Part of why I'm questioning this is I want to know, I do not feel comfortable waiving attorney-client privilege at all. I think that all allegations don't need to be public. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say? And so I'm not saying, I don't want to waive attorney-client privilege. However, reports or redacted information, like how, and so that was my second question. Sorry, Gilda, I'm not trying to prove I just have these like things. If council authorizes to release the final investigative report will there be legally like necessary redactions in there? I guess I haven't I've read it, but I don't know.
No. So waiving the privilege is very specific. There are instances, and some people get fearful, where they inadvertently waive the attorney-client privilege for other things when they're intending to only waive it for something specific. Yeah. This is not a case like that.
Okay.
And this is the privilege that the attorney who did the investigation passed to me, which applies to you as a counsel. So I have an attorney-client privilege with each one of you individually, depending on what conversation we have. I have an attorney-client privilege with you as a counsel, and I have a privilege for the city as a whole. It's the hardest part of my job. Specifically, and we generally don't waive the attorney-client privilege for any of those categories of the people that I represent. City attorneys talk about this as the delicate balance of individual counselors as a whole, and the city as a whole. So this is very, very specific. And the only impact it would have was if someone requests that record to be public or requests a copy of it, I couldn't deny them access to it based on the attorney-client privilege if you waive it. And again, it's the client that waives the privilege, not the attorney.
Okay. And then there is no other subject, like if this gets on and after discussion, it is determined to waive attorney-client privilege for this investigative report, no other subject matter waiver will reach other communications or materials related to the investigation. It will just be.
It's specific as to this one document produced by a conflict counsel. Okay. So it's
not that I'm worried about. I'm trying to ask questions so it's as a bigger whole, not necessarily with this specific thing, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm just.
Honest to God, we're just.
Okay, I was procedure. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I thought we said there were no questions.
Okay.
Was limited.
It's limited discussion.
But let's be clear, once again, this has appeared on an agenda. The expectation was X, and now it's being opened up.
Okay.
And it's been a complete surprise both times that this has been trotted out on the agenda. So anyway.
All right. Seeing more, can I get a roll call, please?
Oh.
The motion passes. 3. In favor, Gilda Yazzie, Dave Woodruff, Jessica Lawyer. 2. Opposed, Kip Koso, Shirley Gonzalez.
Any other new business before we move on? All right. And we are adjourned.